Chapter 29:13. Informing the dead man, Flower the Dark Ancient City was the most mysterious and terrifying place in the Star Wars battlefield. Back then, in the Dark City, Sun Qin saw Gong Gong's finger sweep across his eyes from a long distance away. Moreover, wherever that finger passed, the water roared and turned into a boundless ocean. Although Senki In had only seen the finger, he could guess that it was Gong Gong's finger. Gong Gong was the master of water power among the 12 ancestral shamans. He was the source of all water power. With just a flick of his finger, he was able to turn the place into a vast ocean. Apart from ancestor Magus Gong Gong, no one else could do that. After Senki In guessed that it was ancestral shaman Gong Gong's finger, he realized that there was probably Gong Gong's complete corpse in the dark ancient city. This must be the place where Gong Gong had fallen. Back then, Senki In had chased the finger all the way into the dark ancient city. However, because he had gone too deep and the depths of the dark ancient city were too terrifying, Senki In had finally given up after weighing the pros and cons. This was because he could feel that there was a power in the depths of the dark ancient city that made him very wary. Although he could go in and explore if he wanted to, he would have to pay a very painful price. Senki In was not someone who would do things that he was not confident in, so he did not go too deep into the dark ancient city in the end. Instead, he took the initiative to retreat. Back then, Zhuowen had learned from Ghost Plume that the dark ancient city was the place where Gong Gong had fallen. After learning that it was just Senki In's guess, he could not help but curse. Senki In was really sinister. This guy had clearly said that the location, he knew, was the place where Gong Gong had fallen. Even he had almost believed it. Now that he learned that it was just Senki In's guess, it was really too much of a scam. This was why Zhuowen did not immediately rush to the Star Wars battlefield half a year later. Instead, he came to the Pale Array Immortal Alliance first. After all, Zhuowen already knew that the location was the dark ancient city, and it might not be the place where ancestral wizard Gong Gong had fallen. Therefore, Zhuowen was not very anxious. In his opinion, everyone who entered the dark ancient city did not have a clear direction, and it was still unknown whether they could find the corpse of ancestral shaman Gong Gong. The cultivators who entered early were nothing more than cannon fodder. Zhuowen and Huan Taiping chatted as they walked. From Huan Taiping, Zhuowen learned a lot about the recent happenings and developments. "We're here." Huan Taiping brought Zhuowen into Ji Wuming's cave. In the living room, Ji Wuming stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, as if he knew someone was coming for him. "Alliance Master." Zhuowen and Huan Taiping cupped their hands and saluted Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming turned around and looked at Zhuowen and Huan Taiping with a smile. "What can I do for the two of you?" "Actually, it's like this." Huan Taiping stepped forward and narrated all of Zhuowen's matters in full detail. Ji Wuming raised his eyebrows, squinted his eyes, and said coldly, "The 10 Extremes In Corp sect is really bold. How dare they arrest an immortal master of our Pale Array Immortal Alliance?" Then Ji Wuming's eyes fell on Zhuowen. "Immortal Master Zhuo, tell me, why do the 10 Extremes In Corp sect want to arrest you?" "It's because of this thing." Zhuowen took out a dead flower from the macro world. This was the dead flower he had left behind for Ji Wuming to appraise. "This is..." Ji Wuming looked at the dead flower in front of him with curiosity, but soon his eyes became gloomy. "This is the dead flower, the product of the 10 Extremes In Corp sect's inhumane experiments over the years. I have the information of the dead flower research of the 10 Extremes In Corp sect." Then Zhuowen took out all the jade slips he had obtained from the secret underground chamber of the 10 Extremes In Corp sect and handed them to Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming took the jade slips and glanced at them casually. His face suddenly became solemn, and he did not look very good. "Senki In is really too much. All these years, he has been studying these unorthodox methods." Ji Wuming snorted coldly. Alliance Master, the Dark Netherhell is controlled by the 10 Extremities Een Corp sect. Most of the cultivators who enter there die a violent death. Then, the corpses of the dead cultivators are taken away by the 10 Extremities Een Corp sect to study the dead man flower. Zhuowen cupped his hands and continued, I think the Alliance Master should announce this matter to the world and expose the actions of the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect master, Senki Een. Ji Wuming nodded. Don't worry, Immortal Master Zhuo. I will deal with this matter. By the way, have you found the Underworld Soul Flower? Zhuowen did not think much about it. He nodded slightly, took out the Underworld Soul Flower, and handed it to Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming was very satisfied with the Underworld Soul Flower and said, Now, I will refine the 8 sceneries soul condensing divine pill for your confidant. By the way, Alliance Master, where is Wushang now? Zhuowen asked. Oh, I have placed her in the pavilion in the northwest corner of the Immortal Allies. There are people there to take care of her. Don't worry, Ji Wuming said. I hope the Alliance Master can take me to see her. Zhuowen said in a deep voice. I still need to refine the 8 sceneries, soul, condensing divine pill. I will take you there when I am done. Ji Wuming said lightly. Zhuowen frowned slightly and cupped his hands. Then I will wait here for the Alliance Master to refine the 8 sceneries, soul, condensing divine pill. Ji Wuming took a deep look at Zhuowen and nodded. All right, I only need half a day to refine the 8 sceneries, soul, condensing divine pills. You can wait here for half a day. Taiping, you can go back first. Huan Taiping cupped his hands and said a few words to Zhuowen. Then he left. Ji Wuming told Zhuowen not to disturb him and went straight to the inner room to refine the pill. Zhuowen silently sat cross-legged on the side, waiting for Ji Wuming. Zhuowen did not tell Ji Wuming about the Yama ghost diagram. After all, it was a heaven-level divine artifact. He would not casually tell Ji Wuming about it to avoid unnecessary trouble. Half a day later, Ji Wuming came out from the inner room and said, Master Zhuo, now I will take you to see Moyin Wushang. Here is the 8 sceneries, soul, condensing divine pill. Take it and give it to Moyin Wushang. Zhuowen took the 8 scenery soul, condensing divine pill from Ji Wuming and felt a surge of medicinal power. On the surface of the 8 scenery soul, condensing divine pill, there were 8 different colored patterns. Chapter 29:14. Dark Ancient City, the northwest corner of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, was a relatively remote place in the Alliance. However, in this remote northwest corner, there was a very luxurious pavilion. However, due to the fact that the northwestern corner was too remote, it was hard to see anyone there. Although this place was remote, the environment was good. There were pavilions, terraces, waterfalls, and towering trees. The moment Zhuowen entered this place, he couldn't help but nod in his heart. Although this place was a little remote, the environment was to his liking. It was like a paradise. This place was chosen by Taiping. Is Master Zhuo satisfied? Ji Wuming, who was standing at the head of the Flying Divine Tool, asked when he saw the surprised look on Zhuowen's face. Although this place is a little remote, the environment is good. I'm very satisfied. Master Huan is very considerate. Zhuowen nodded. Ji Wuming nodded and pointed to the pavilion in the distance. I've placed Moyin Wushang in that pavilion. You go and feed her the 8 scenery soul, condensing divine pill. And Zhuowen was surprised when he saw that Ji Wuming wanted to say something. Ji Wuming had always given him the impression that he was calm and unhurried, as if nothing could make him worry. Now, Ji Wuming's hesitation really surprised Zhuowen. Alliance Master, if you have something to say, you can tell me directly. Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Ji Wuming nodded and said calmly, Have you told anyone about the dead flower? Zhuowen was startled, but he didn't think much about it. He shook his head and said, After I escaped from the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect, I've been on the run. I return to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance directly. This matter is very important, so I naturally can't speak of it casually. Master Joie, you've done well. This matter is very important, so you can't speak of it casually. Otherwise, you'll be targeted by people with ulterior motives. Ji Wuming said seriously. Don't worry, Alliance Master. I know this. I don't know when you plan to publicize the matter of the dead flower. With your reputation, I think most of the forces in the Eastern Dao domain will believe you. Zhuo Wen looked at Ji Wuming. The latter smiled and said, I'll publicize this matter tomorrow. The dead flower is harmful to others. It can't be delayed for too long, and it will harm other cultivators. Thank you, Alliance Master. I'll go in and check on Wushang first. At this moment, Zhuo Wen and Ji Wuming had arrived at the door of the pavilion. Zhuo Wen cupped his hands and opened the door to enter. Ji Wuming stood silently at the door. Looking at Zhuo Wen's back, his eyes slowly narrowed, and his expression flickered. Pavilion was pavilion, was pavilion, was pavilions, was pavilion was. At a glance, Zhuo Wen saw the crystal coffin placed in the center of the pavilion. Inside the coffin lay a beautiful woman who looked like a sleeping beauty. Zhuo Wen stepped in front of the coffin and opened the lid. He said softly, Wushang, although I can't save you immediately, I'm thinking of a way. I'll definitely wake you up. After that, Zhuo Wen took out the 8 scenery soul concentrating god pill and fed it to Moyin of Wushang. After swallowing the 8 scenery soul consolidating divine pill, Moyin Wushang's pale face suddenly became rosy. Zhuo Wen could clearly feel that Moyin Wushang's aura was getting stronger. He was no longer as weak as before. As Zhuo Wen's consciousness scanned Moyin Wushang's soul, the loose soul in his body had become a lot more solid. This was just the 8 scenery soul condensing divine pill, and there was already such a significant effect. If Moyin of Wushang completely absorbed the effects of the pill, the effect would be even better. Seeing that Moyin of Wushang's complexion was getting better and better, Zhuo Wen's heart was completely relieved. He knew that after Moyin of Wushang absorbed the 8 scenery soul condensing divine pill, his soul would become extremely solid. Even if he slept for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even longer, his soul would not naturally collapse. Because the only thing Zhuo Wen had to do was to help Moyin of Wushang recover the missing 6 desires on the soul level. And to do this, he had to refine the 6 desires soul condensing divine pill. After thinking that the 6 desires soul condensing divine pill was a heaven-level divine pill, Zhuo Wen felt a little bitter, but he was not discouraged. He knew that it was basically impossible for him to refine the 6 desires soul condensing divine pill now, but he believed that it was not impossible for him to refine it in the future. Of course, his primary goal now was to find the 6 heaven-level main ingredients for the 6 desires soul condensing divine pill. After Moyin of Wushang's soul had completely stabilized, Zhuo Wen felt relieved and put Moyin of Wushang back into the great world. Walking out of the pavilion, Zhuo Wen looked at Ji Wuming and asked, Alliance Master, I want to ask if you have heard of the 1,000-year flowerless eyes, red cloud, green sun red, blazing phoenix, exquisite leaf, Buddha yellow water bamboo, 3 realms flower chinyu, and red moon star wave milk. Ji Wuming looked at Zhuo Wen as if he had seen a ghost and said, These 6 heaven-level divine pills are rare in the world. Immortal Master Zhuo, why are you asking about these 6 heaven-level divine pills? I want to find these 6 heaven-level divine pills. This is the key to whether or not Wushang can recover his 6 desires, Zhuo Wen said firmly. Ji Wuming's expression was complicated. He pondered for a moment and said, We don't have any heaven-grade elixirs in the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, but we definitely have some in the Pill Array Dao domain. However, there won't be many of them. Even a true heaven-grade alchemist rarely uses heaven-grade elixirs, because there are too few of them. Only in the Pill Array Dao domain. Zhuo Wen asked with a frown, Heavenly divine medicines have appeared in the starry sky battlefield before. However, each time they appear will cause a bloodbath. There will be a great war, and many experts will try to snatch them. With your current strength, even if such a heaven-level divine pill appears in the star battlefield, it will be difficult for you to snatch it. Ji Wuming shook his head. Zhuowen didn't answer Ji Wuming's question. Instead, he asked, "Does the dark ancient city also have heaven-level divine pills?" Ji Wuming was startled and immediately nodded. The dark ancient city is one of the most dangerous places in the star battlefield. The chances of heaven-level divine pills appearing here are even higher. Maybe one or more of the 6 heaven-level divine pills you want can be found there. Thank you for your advice. I'm going to the dark ancient city in the star battlefield. Can you give me a star map of the star battlefield? Zhuowen cupped his fists. Chapter 29:15. Calculated killing intent. The reason why the astral battlefield was such a crucial place was because of its special geographical location. It was located at the border between the Xianmi heavenly domain and the primitive heavenly domain. In other words, if a Tao-confirming cultivator flew from the astral battlefield, it would only take a few months to reach the primitive heavenly domain from the Xianmi heavenly domain, or from the primitive heavenly domain to the Xianmi heavenly domain. Because of this special geographical location, the astral battlefield had always been in a terrible state of war since its formation. Both the alien races of the primitive heavenly domain and the cultivators of the Xianmi heavenly domain wanted to invade each other's territory. So the 2 heavenly domains fought each other all year round, resulting in countless casualties. Moreover, the astral battlefield was an unprecedented treasure land. Countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures had appeared in it. Many cultivators and alien races had obtained the treasures by luck and become experts, becoming legends for a time. As such rumors spread, more and more people became jealous and went to the astral battlefield to take risks, hoping to obtain great benefits there. The chances of a heaven-reaching divine herb appearing in such a treasure land were much higher than in other places. Ji Wuming looked deeply at Zhuowen and said, "I think you already know that ancestor sorcerer Gonggong died in the dark ancient city. So you want to enter the dark ancient city to try your luck. You have to think carefully. The dark ancient city is much more dangerous than the ordinary areas of the astral battlefield. Even an expert like Senki Yin wouldn't dare to enter the depths of the dark ancient city alone." Zhuowen cupped his fists and said, "I know what I'm doing. I hope Alliance Master can give me a map of the astral battlefield." Ji Wuming saw that Zhuowen had made up his mind, so he didn't say anything more. He simply handed a jade slip to Zhuowen and said, "This is the map of the astral battlefield. Because of the special nature of the astral battlefield, it is impossible to build a transmission array in that area. If you want to enter the astral battlefield, you must use a flying divine tool." Zhuowen took the jade slip, browsed it, and thanked Ji Wuming with cupped fists. Zhuowen and Ji Wuming chatted for a while before leaving the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Ji Wuming silently looked at Zhuowen's back as he left. Behind him, Huan Taiping slowly walked out and said with a complicated look in his eyes, "Alliance Master, I really didn't expect Immortal Master Zhua to be able to find the Dead Flower's secret laboratory in the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect. This matter is of great importance. If Immortal Master Zhua finds out about this, I'm afraid it will be troublesome." Ji Wuming sighed. "I can only say that Master Zhua is too lucky to have run into the Dead Flower. However, the Dead Flower is the result of many years of joint research between me and Senki Yin. We can't let it go to waste because of him." Huan Taiping's gaze flickered, and he said, "Alliance Head, are you really going to make a move against Immortal Master Zhua? After all, he's already an Immortal Master of our Immortal Alliance, and he's also the best candidate for the qualifier 200 years later." Ji Wuming interrupted Huan Taiping and said, "There are still 200 years before the qualifier. During this time, we can find a more talented young alchemist than Zhuowen. However, the dead flower can only be used once. If it fails, my efforts will be ruined, and I'll be cursed by countless people. What do you think I should do? Ji Wuming's eyes were sharp as he coldly looked at Huan, Taiping beside him. The latter lowered his head, not daring to refute Ji Wuming. It was indeed as Ji Wuming had said. If he had to choose between the research of the dead flower and a talented junior, he would naturally choose the former. Alliance Master, how do you plan to deal with Zhuowen? Huan Taiping whispered. I've already contacted the Blood Prison 7 killers. 3 of them are willing to help. Ji Wuming said indifferently. Huan Taiping's pupils shrank. The Blood Prison 7 killers were the titles of the 7 high-ranking members of the Blood Prison organization. The Blood Prison 7 killers had assassinated countless experts over the years and created a great reputation for themselves. The weakest of the Blood Prison 7 killers was an early-stage Lord of Creation, while the strongest was a mid-stage Lord of Creation. Moreover, the Blood Prison 7 killers' battle prowess basically surpassed experts of the same level. Moreover, because they specialized in assassination and concealment techniques, each of them had killed experts of the same level or even a high-grade expert. This was also why the Blood Prison was so famous even among Dao Palace-level factions, even though it was only a Dao Palace-level faction. Whenever the Blood Prison was mentioned, it gave people the impression of being mysterious and powerful. 3 of them are willing to help. Huan Taiping shook his head inwardly. He knew that if the Blood Prison 7 killers took action, Zhuowen would undoubtedly die. Huan Taiping had indeed seen Zhuowen's strength before. It was indeed not bad, but it was still a little far from the Blood Prison 7 killers. Moreover, the Blood Prison 7 killers were best at sneak attacks and assassinations. Moreover, 3 of them had attacked together. He really couldn't think of a reason why Zhuowen could escape their pursuit. I originally thought that Immortal Master Zhua and I would always be good partners. Now, it seems like it was just wishful thinking. Immortal Master Zhua took a wrong step, so every step was wrong. Huan Taiping shook his head and thought to himself. Zhuowen sat cross-legged on the space-time roulette and rapidly streaked across the starry sky. He had already left the Pale Array Immortal Alliance for more than half a month. When he opened the map that Ji Wuming had given him again, he discovered that he would soon arrive at the Star Wars battlefield. With his current speed, he would be able to enter the Star Wars battlefield in 4 or 5 days. However, the closer he got to the Star Wars battlefield, the more uneasy Zhuowen felt. Zhuowen felt that something was wrong. He had cultivated to the point where he knew his destiny. Thus, he felt an inexplicable sense of unease in his heart. Something was definitely about to happen. Zhuowen pointed his right hand's 5 fingers and started to use the heavenly divination art. A mysterious energy spread out from his right hand's 5 fingers. This mysterious energy formed a pair of transparent void eyes above his head. Zhuowen knew that this was the manifestation of the heavenly divination art. It could see through falsehood and predict good and bad luck. Zhuowen saw a bloody light through the heavenly divination eye. His expression turned ugly. He knew that something ominous was waiting for him on the road ahead. Putting away the void eyes, Zhuowen's face turned slightly pale. However, his eyes were filled with indifference. He muttered in a low voice, 3 days later, a great killing intent will descend. It seems like I have to be prepared. Zhuowen didn't continue using the heavenly divination art. After all, the heavenly divination art wasn't without a price. The more he divined, the more his lifespan would be consumed. Chapter 29:16. Blood Prison 7 killers 3 days later. The boundary of the astral battlefield appeared in the distance. The boundary of the astral battlefield was very different from the boundary of the other forces in the Xian, Mi heavenly domain. The other boundary emitted gentle starlight. However, The boundary of the astral battlefield was filled with blood-red light and a murderous aura. It was accompanied by foul resentment. From afar, the boundary of the astral battlefield looked like a vicious hell. A streak of light rapidly flew toward the boundary of the astral battlefield. However, tens of thousands of kilometers away from the boundary of the astral battlefield, 3 murderous auras instantly locked onto the streak of light. Immediately after, 3 terrifying attacks erupted and blasted into the streak of light. Rumble. There was a thunderous explosion. The streak of light didn't even have time to react before it was blasted into dust by the 3 terrifying attacks. He can't even withstand a single blow. I thought he would be some powerful expert. He was actually annihilated just like that. He's a little too weak. Big Brother is making a mountain out of a molehill by sending the 3 of us. From the information, this kid has a deep grudge with our blood prison. Back then, he killed many of our blood prison assassins. Although they were only low-level assassins, he still killed our people. 3 voices, neither yin nor yang, came from not far away from the sound of self-detonation. These were 3 men completely covered in blood-red robes. The 3 of them were wearing the same clothes. The only difference was the weapons in their hands and the insignia on the sleeves of their robes. The man in blood-red robes holding a blood-red sword had the ancient number 7 written on his sleeve. The man with the blood-red halberd had the ancient number 6 written on his sleeve. The man in blood-red robes with the strongest aura among the 3 wore blood-red gloves. The ancient number 5 was written on his sleeve. These 3 were none other than 5th killer, 6th killer, and 7th killer of the blood prison's 7 killers. 6th killer and 7th killer were both at the early stage of the God of Creation stage, while 5th killer was at the mid-stage of the God of Creation stage. Generally speaking, anyone who could make the 3 of them work together was usually someone important or a high-level expert of a Tao Palace faction. Now, the 3 killers had completely annihilated their target. The process was so simple that there was no process at all. The 3 killers couldn't help but grumble. They felt that they had used a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Are you blood prison assassins? Suddenly, just as the 3 assassins were complaining, an unfriendly voice came from nearby. The 3 killers who were originally complaining all turned their heads and looked at the young man who was slowly walking over from behind. Their eyes narrowed. It's the target. He's not dead? 7 kills, said in surprise. 5 kills and 6 kills were also shocked, since their target was still alive, who was the one who had attacked them. There's no need to be surprised. What you killed just now was merely a puppet that I created in advance. However, the appearance and aura of that puppet were very similar to mine. If you didn't look carefully, it would be very difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Zhuowen's voice was calm, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. It was not the first time that the blood prison assassins had provoked him. They had done it several times, and the assassins they sent were stronger each time. They really wanted to kill him. Furthermore, they had sent 3 God of Creation assassins. If Zhuowen had not known beforehand and had been ambushed by the 3 God of Creation assassins who had been lying in ambush in advance, Zhuowen knew that he would definitely have been injured, and the injuries would not be light. However, what Zhuowen did not understand was that from the way the 3 assassins attacked, it seemed that they had known that their target would pass through this path. Could it be that the blood prison had foreseen that Zhuowen would definitely come to the astral battlefield during this period of time and would definitely pass through this path? Oh, it seems that we've been tricked. You're really not ordinary. 5 kills looked at Zhuowen with interest. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Although their assassination plan had failed, it did not matter because the aura of the young man in front of them was very weak. He was only the Lord of Mystery. His cultivation was too low. Even 7 kills, who was the weakest among them, could easily kill him, let alone escape from their hands. It was precisely because the opponent was too weak that 5 kills did not take him seriously. However, what I admire more is your courage. Since you knew that we were ambushing you, Shouldn't you have fled in panic? You actually dared to appear in front of us. 5 Kills cocked his head to the side and said mockingly. Zhou gaze was calm, and he said indifferently, "The reason I appeared in front of you is because you've angered me. The consequences are very severe." Haha, how laughable. Even a piece of trash like the Lord of Mystery has a temper? Don't say that I angered you. You should be honored that I killed you. 7 Kills' eyes flashed coldly, and his words were very presumptuous. Who hired you to kill me? Zhou did not pay attention to 7 Kills' words. Instead, he continued to ask questions. Looks like there's something wrong with your brain. You actually want to ask about your employer's information. Although you're about to die under my sword, I don't plan on letting you die as a ghost. It's better for you to die like this and slowly ask the King of Hell about it. 7 Kills licked his lips. In the end, he could not hold back anymore and brazenly attacked. He held the blood-red sword with both hands and swung it in a mysterious trajectory. The blood-red light soared into the sky, and it was terrifying, as if the sky and earth were falling apart. The moment the blood-red light shone on him, Zhou felt a huge pressure on his body, as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. However, this pressure was nothing to Zhou, who had cultivated the Pangu's sacred body. He only needed to circulate the power of the Pangu's sacred body in his body to completely offset this huge pressure. However, Zhou's performance was not like that. His face was pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. It was as if he was enduring a huge amount of pressure. When 7 Kills saw Zhou's reluctant look, his eyes were full of pride. He knew that the gap between him and this person was too big. It seemed that this person could not even withstand the aura that he was emitting. How could he fight with him? How boring. I thought that you would be stronger than the average Lord of Mystery and could play with me a little longer. Now, it seems that you're a complete piece of trash. You're completely useless. 7 Kills laughed loudly, and his attack had already landed on Zhou's body. It had to be said that 7 Kills was indeed very insidious. He slashed at Zhou's forehead with one sword and at Zhou's crotch with the other sword, because they were slashing at the same time and the speed was just right. However, Zhou Ming could only block one part of his body. If he blocked the space between his eyebrows, he would be able to preserve his life. However, his manly aura would disappear completely. If he blocked his crotch, Zhou Ming would also be gone. Zhou narrowed his eyes. This 7 Kills was really arrogant. He wanted to use this method to tease and humiliate him. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 sword lights swept out from behind Zhou. The Blood Immortal sword and the Sacrifice of Death sword instantly blocked 7 Kills' 2 swords. The Blood Immortal sword and the Sacrifice of Death sword had made great progress. With the help of the sword tomb and many ores and materials, they had both become eternal-level divine weapons. It was more than enough to block 7 Kills' casual attack. The moment they blocked 7 Kills' attack, another sword light swept out from behind Zhou. With the terrifying power of thunder and fire, it instantly swept to the bottom of 7 Kills' feet. Then, from bottom to top, it rushed into 7 Kills' crotch. Chapter 29:17. Jean Sensha there was a blood-curdling scream. Lu Sha sneered and said indifferently, "He is indeed a good-for-nothing. It seems that 7th brother is in a hurry to kill this boy." Judging from the intensity of the scream, this boy is probably... When Lu Sha finished speaking, his eyes fell on the battle. Immediately, the corners of his eyes twitched, and his face stiffened. This was because the scream did not come from the young man he thought it was, but from 7 Kills, who he was full of confidence in. 6th brother, what are you waiting for? Attack with me. This boy is really not simple. He is not weak. 7th brother, you are too careless. 5 Kills was the first to react. He took a step forward and said to Lu Sha. Then he disappeared as if he had teleported. After 6 Kills came to his senses, He let out a roar and followed 5 kills to attack. The boy, who was just an ant in his eyes, suddenly exploded and kicked his 7th brother's manhood. This was a slap in the face for them. Liu Sha was very angry. Naturally, he wanted to kill Zhuowen to vent his anger. "Little bastard, how dare you use a dirty trick?" 7 kills covered his crotch with both hands and quickly retreated. Snot and tears flowed down his face. Even at his level of cultivation, that part of his body was extremely fragile. Moreover, the Thunder Fire Sword was now at the peak of the eternal level. When 7 kills was unprepared, his manhood would have been broken, no matter how hard it was. After 7 kills quickly got used to the pain, he roared and attacked the Thunder Fire Sword with all his strength. Unfortunately, Xiao He was very cunning. The moment he attacked, he had already thought of a way to retreat. He just happened to dodge 7 kills attack. 7 kills was mad. When he saw Xiao He retreating, he ignored Xiao He and chased after Xiao He. His manhood was shattered by the hateful divine sword. He knew that even if he repaired it with divine power, it would not be as good as before. All of this was caused by this abominable divine sword. He wanted to capture this divine sword and extract the artifact spirit within it. Then he would use the divine fire to incinerate it, making it suffer the pain of being incinerated by the divine fire for eternity. Zhuowen had already arrived in front of 7 kills. His whole body was shining with crystal light. He struck out with both hands and performed the tyrannical art of slaughtering Tao. It was as if he had become a fighting machine. Scram! 7 kills' eyes were red. He slapped Zhuowen. Clearly, he did not care about Zhuowen at all. All he cared about was the Thunder Fire Sword. Zhuowen sneered inwardly. He formed a palm with his right hand and abruptly struck out, shattering Qi Sha's palm. Then, his left hand ruthlessly struck Qi Sha's face. The terrifying power sent 7 kills flying. Countless cracks appeared on his head. Qi Sha was in a daze. His eyes rolled back and he was delirious. Zhuowen took a step forward, wanting to give Qi Sha the final blow. Unfortunately, 5 kills and 6 kills had already arrived. 6 kills was holding a huge blood halberd. He threw the halberd in the air. The blood halberd was extremely fast. It turned into a terrifying blood light in the air and quickly landed in front of Zhuowen's chest. 6 kills was much stronger than 7 kills. The power of the blood halberd thrown with all his strength was also very terrifying. Of course, 6 kills was quite satisfied with this attack. In his opinion, the blood halberd flying in the air would definitely injure the young man severely. Boom! Zhuowen's right foot stomped on the air, causing a terrifying, explosive sound to erupt. Shortly after, his right palm borrowed the force of his right foot to fiercely slap the body of the blood halberd. A terrifying force swept out, forming circle after circle of terrifying air waves. Then 6 kills was stunned to find that the blood halberd he threw with all his strength had been knocked away by the young man's palm. Moreover, there were traces of cracks on the surface of the blood halberd. What kind of power did this require to make the blood halberd, which was a half-step Genesis divine artifact, crack? This was unbelievable. The moment Zhuowen blasted away the blood halberd, 5 kills had already arrived. 5 kills throughout an exquisite fist technique. After a set of fist techniques, the energy of the entire starry sky seemed to gather around 5 kills. It was as if Zhuowen was not facing a person, but a huge star. Zhuowen sneered in his heart. His 5 fingers clenched into fists. He also punched 5 kills, fists violently. He cultivated the Pangu sacred body, so he was not afraid of this kind of violent collision. Under this starry sky, no race's physical strength could compare with Pangu's. After dozens of punches in an instant, 5 kills grunted and retreated hundreds of steps. Both of his fists were badly mangled, and his fists were trembling non-stop. On the other hand, Zhuowen's fists were crystal clear, as if they were carved out of the most perfect jade in the world. Under the attack, Just now, Zhou fists were not damaged at all. How is this possible? 5 Kills' eyes were glazed. This fist technique was passed down from his ancestors. It was a fist technique that followed the path of the heavenly Tao. Its power was terrifying. It was because of this fist technique that 5 Kills was much stronger than other cultivators of the same level. Moreover, his assassination ability was much weaker than his direct attack ability. All of this was because of this fist technique. But now, this fist technique that had always been successful was simply trash in front of Zhou. Zhou did not even use any fist technique. His attacks were not fancy at all. They were just casual punches. You're too weak. Zhou's eyes were calm. He took a step forward and continued to rush toward 5 Kills. He still punched without any fancy moves. 5 Kills was irritated by Zhou's words. He exerted his fist technique to the extreme. It seemed to have transcended time and space. Its power was many times stronger than before. You've improved a little. Zhou punched out. He was evenly matched with 5 Kills. His eyes were full of surprise. 5 Kills' face was gloomy. He shouted, "Sixth brother, what are you waiting for? Come and finish this guy together." 6 Kills was not far away. He had already put away his blood halberd. He was shocked to see 5 Kills being suppressed by Zhou. He knew 5 Kills' strength very well. He knew that 5 Kills' cultivation was only 1 level higher than his, but his actual strength was more than 1 level higher than his. But now 5 Kills, who was very powerful in his heart, was easily defeated by Zhou. Naturally, he felt very unbalanced. Now that 5 Kills had spoken, he naturally could not continue to watch the show. He roared and rushed forward. The blood halberd in his hand danced, and countless blood halberd shadows appeared, surrounding Zhou. Zhou did not care about the halberd shadows at all. Instead, his whole body shone brightly, and he attacked 5 Kills. Chapter 29:18. How dare you ignore my attacks? Seeing that Zhou completely ignored his attacks, 6 Kills' face suddenly darkened. Obviously, Zhou's disregard was the greatest contempt for him. But soon a cruel look appeared in his eyes. His attacks might not be as strong as 5 Kills, but if he wanted to resist without defending, he would have to pay a terrible price. Bang! Countless halberd silhouettes landed on Zhou Wen's body, causing Zhou Wen's charging figure to stagger. His speed slowed down as the halberd silhouettes left white marks on his body. But that was all. After Zhou withstood this wave of halberd attacks, he did not slow down and rushed toward 5 Kills again. 6 Kills was stunned. His attacks only left white marks on Yi Fuqian's body. They could not even cause a wound. This was too shocking. Bang! 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 Zhou collided with 5 Kills again. The power of the peak 5-star Pango sacred body burst out without reservation. He also used the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique to the extreme, making him look like a terrifying fighting machine. The more 5 Kills fought, the more frightened he became. The injuries on his body also became more and more terrifying. He began to feel fear. At this moment, Zhou was like a towering mountain sitting in front of him, making him feel like he was being pressured and suffocated. At the same time, he cursed his employer in his heart. He had seriously underestimated the strength of the target. If he had known that the target was so terrifying, he would have needed at least one of the top 3 of 7 Kills to cooperate with them. To be honest, their lineup was not enough for this person. 5 Kills only felt pain in his right arm. Then he found that his right arm had been torn off by Zhou. The intense pain made him scream involuntarily. 5 Kills was really scared. He began to retreat, but soon found that he had no way out. He had been completely locked on by the young man in front of him. He could only fight. Running away would only make him die faster. Let's fight. After finding that there was no way out, 5 Kills went all out and began to fight Zhou to the death. I've played enough with you. I'm not playing anymore. Zhuowen smiled faintly. Then his right hand formed into a blade and formed a mysterious trajectory in the air. He suddenly slashed out, and a white blade of air that reached the heavens, and the earth shot out. Its surface emitted an aura that transcended the way of the heavens. 5 kills screamed. In front of this white chi blade, he was like an insignificant ant. He tried his best to 6 kills. In the end, he could only watch as his body was split into 2 halves by the white blade of air. His spirit was also split into 2 halves, and his consciousness completely dissipated. The moment 6 kills saw 5 kills being killed, he immediately used an escape technique to retreat. But unfortunately, Zhuowen had already had eyes on him. He translation the moment 6 kills, translation. 6 kills, S translation, and 6 kills, 6 kill. 6 kills looked at the young man with a hideous smile in front of him and felt a chill in his heart. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he found that his head had been separated from his body. It turned out that Zhuowen had used the sky-splitting blade to cut off 6 kills' head. After 5 kills and 6 kills were completely killed, 7 kills, who had just woken up, happened to see 5 kills and 6 kills die. He trembled all over and knelt down. "My lord, we failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you. Please be magnanimous and spare my lowly life." 7 kills trembled, and his voice became a little shrill. Zhuowen silently looked at 7 kills, who was begging for mercy. He was speechless. Compared to 6 kills and 5 kills, 7 kills was obviously more righteous. To put it bluntly, 7 kills was the most spineless of the 3. "It's not like I can't spare your lowly life. Tell me, who is your employer?" Zhuowen asked indifferently. "Employer?" 7 kills looked uncertain. He could only say helplessly, "My lord, this mission is very secret. It was issued by our big brother. He didn't disclose the employer's information, so we don't know who the employer is." "Oh, the big brother you speak of is 1 kill of the blood prison's 7 kills, right?" Zhuowen said indifferently. Zhuowen had also heard of the blood prison's 7 kills. He knew that the 7 kills were the management of the blood prison and were the 7 most terrifying assassins in the blood prison. The 3 assassins who came to kill him this time were the weakest of the 7 kills. The strongest should be 1 kill, who is also the most mysterious and powerful of the 7 kills. 7 kills quickly nodded, a flattering smile on his face. "In that case, I'd like to ask you, how did the 3 of you know in advance that I was going to pass by here and ambush me in advance?" Zhuowen stared at 7 kills, his body suddenly releasing a powerful aura. His expression was very unfriendly. 7 kills trembled. He could feel the killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes. He had no doubt that if he dared to lie, the latter would kill him with thunderous means. 7 kills hesitated for a moment and said, somewhat timidly, "I'm not too sure about this. It was our boss who gave us the location and told us to ambush you here in advance." "In other words, the person who knew in advance that I would pass by here was the employer?" Zhuowen said. 7 kills was silent. This matter was already very obvious. 1 kill was the leader of the blood prison and had never met Zhuowen. It was certainly impossible for him to know in advance about Zhuowen's route. Only the employer who hired the blood prison to kill him would provide such information, and this employer was definitely someone Zhuowen knew. Zhuowen could not help but think of a figure in his mind. The news of him going to the Star Battlefield this time was only known to the Alliance Master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, Ji Wuming and Huan Taiping. Moreover, the Star Battlefield star map was also given to him by Ji Wuming. If there was anyone who knew his route the best, it would be Ji Wuming. However, Zhuowen was very surprised by his guess. At the same time, he found it inconceivable. Ji Wuming valued him very much and had even given him the position of an immortal master. He had even entrusted the Pill Array Dao domain's qualifiers 200 years later to him. He really could not figure out why Ji Wuming, who valued him so much, would hire the blood prison to kill him. What was his motive? Thinking of this, Zhuo felt a little irritable and uneasy. Although Zhuo's mind was full of doubts, and he had the urge to return to the Pil-Array Immortal Alliance directly, he knew that it was not appropriate to go back now. Moreover, he had already arrived at the star battlefield. There was no need to go back just to ask such a question. He knew very well that even if this matter was not ordered by Ji Wuming, the answer he would get would be negative. Use the divine divination technique to calculate Ji Wuming first. Chapter 29:19. Starry sky, camped the moment the eye of nothingness condensed. Zhuo's face became even paler. He could clearly feel that his lifespan was rapidly slipping away. The most direct manifestation of this was that his body became extremely weak at this moment, as if he was suffering from a serious illness. Pucci! Zhuo spat out a mouthful of blood, but his expression was very ugly. Using the art of divine calculation twice in such a short period of time was too much of a burden on him. It even forced him to suffer from serious internal injuries. The person who hired the blood prison assassins to assassinate me was indeed Ji Wuming. Why did he do this? Zhuo's eyes were gloomy. He could see from the eye of nothingness that the person who hired the assassins was Ji Wuming, the leader of the Pil-Array Immortal Alliance. Could it be the dead flower? Zhuo's eyes lit up. He remembered that when he gave all the information about the dead flower to Ji Wuming, the latter did not immediately announce it to the world. Instead, he changed the topic. At that time, Zhuo did not pay much attention to it. Now that he thought about it, Ji Wuming's previous behavior was indeed a little abnormal. It seems that I can't go back to the Pil-Array Immortal Alliance. Zhuo sighed. He was a little depressed. He had just become an immortal master of the Pil-Array Immortal Alliance, but he had already fallen out with the Alliance and became a rogue cultivator without anyone to rely on. Moreover, he couldn't talk about the dead flower now. Who knew how many forces were involved in the research of the dead flower? Perhaps if he let it slip, it would lead to a disaster. Then the losses would outweigh the gains. Moreover, he had given all the information about the dead flower to Ji Wuming. Without this information, he could only talk about it verbally without any evidence. At that time, he would bring a lot of trouble. Let's go to the dark ancient city first. Zhuo's eyes flickered. He planned to explore the dark ancient city first. His current strength was still too low, even with the Yama ghost diagram. His strength was at most comparable to an ordinary creator. If his Panga's sacred body could reach the 6-star level, he might not be able to defeat Sun Qin, the lord of Tongtian. However, it would not be easy for Senki Yin to kill him. By then, Zhuo would have the ability to protect himself in the host region to a certain extent. Therefore, if the corpse of ancestral shaman Gonggong really existed in the dark ancient city, then he must find the goo worm in Gonggong's body. After fusing with the Gonggong goo, Zhuo believed that he had a chance to break through to the 6-star realm. The space within the astral battlefield was vast. The stars that floated within it were all suffused with a blood-red glow, giving off a bloodthirsty glow. The Star Wars battlefield was divided into 4 regions. These 4 regions were under the charge of the Xian Mi Heavenly Regions, 4 great Dao domains. Zhuo had entered the encampment of the Star Wars battlefield that the host region was in charge of. It was called the Eastern Space Camp. Zhuo remembered that this Star Wars battlefield was the most important place in the Xian Mi Heavenly Domain. It was said that the Dao lords of the 4 Dao domains were stationed in the 4 camps of the Star Wars battlefield all year round. The so-called Dao lord of each Dao domain was the person in charge of each Dao domain. He was also the strongest person in each Dao domain. He was the person with the highest authority in charge of all the forces in the entire Dao domain. Even the Dao Palace level forces in the Dao domain had to listen to the orders of the Dao Lord. This was because the Dao Lord represented the master of the entire Dao domain. He was a supreme existence. Originally, the 4 Dao lords were not stationed in the Star Wars battlefield a long time ago. Instead, they stayed in their respective Dao domains and were in charge of the forces in their respective Dao domains. However, tens of thousands of years ago, the foreign races from the primitive heavenly region invaded the Xian Mi heavenly region on a large scale. Nearly half of the 10 great races of the primitive heavenly region were mobilized. Moreover, the leaders of each race had participated in this battle. That battle was very tragic. The Xian Mi heavenly region's Star Wars camp was almost attacked. In the end, the 4 Dao lords joined forces and barely managed to repel the foreign races from the primitive heavenly region. They managed to protect the Xian Mi heavenly region's Star Wars camp. Moreover, after that tragic lesson, the 4 Dao lords decided to stay in the Star Wars camp all year round. Unless something major happened in their Dao domains, they would not leave the Star Wars battlefield easily. Zhuowen had learned about the 4 Dao lords from Ghost Plume. It was said that the Eastern Dao lord who guarded the Eastern Star Wars camp was called Tan Xinghua. He was a powerful expert with great talent and bold vision. His strength was at least at the peak of the early stage heaven-reaching Master Realm. After so many years, Ghost Plume guessed that Tan Xinghua should have broken through and reached the mid-stage heaven-reaching Master Realm. At this moment, 3 figures appeared at the entrance of the Eastern Star Wars camp. The person in the lead was a young man with 2 scars on his face. This young man was Zhuowen in disguise. Of course, his current name was still Ma Yujie. The 2 people following behind Zhuowen were one old and one young. They were naturally Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia. At this moment, Ghost Plume was following behind Zhuowen in a daze. Zhuowen had indeed promised not to kill him, but he had extracted a strand of his soul and forced him to become Zhuowen's slave. His life and death were in Zhuowen's hands. The entrance to the Eastern Star Wars camp was a huge, hollow bronze door. The bronze door was covered in a coppery green color and looked unremarkable. However, the vicissitudes and heaviness that were faintly emitted from it made it obvious at a glance that this bronze door was definitely not an ordinary object. Moreover, it was very old and ancient. The guards guarding the 2 sides of the bronze door were only Heaven Dao lords. However, Zhuowen could sense the austere aura coming from these 2 guards. Only those who had experienced countless massacres would have such an austere aura. Zhuowen had no doubt that although these 2 guards were only Heaven Dao lords, ordinary Heaven Dao lords were no match for these 2 guards in a real battle. Which sect do the 3 of you come from? When Zhuowen led Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia through the entrance, the 2 guards stopped the 3 of them and asked calmly, "We don't belong to any sect. We are itinerant cultivators." Zhuowen replied, "Since you are itinerant cultivators, each of you has to pay 10 high-grade Heaven Dao crystals," the guard said. Zhuowen revealed a surprised expression and asked in return, "Do you mean that cultivators who belong to sects don't have to pay?" Yin Wuxia pulled Zhuowen and whispered, "Master, these are the rules. Itinerant cultivators who don't belong to any sect have to pay 10 high-grade Heaven Dao crystals. On the other hand, Dao Order disciples have to pay 5 high-grade Heavenly Dao crystals, while Dao Palace disciples only have to pay 3 high-grade Heavenly Dao crystals. On the other hand, Dao Palace disciples don't have to pay any Heavenly Dao crystals." Zhuowen was surprised. He didn't expect the Star Wars camp to have such a rule. After handing over 30 high-grade Heaven Path crystals, the 3 of them were able to enter the universal campsite smoothly. After entering, Zhuowen realized that he seemed to have entered another world. It was obvious that the Star Wars camp's exterior was set up with a very powerful array formation. Only when one truly entered the Star Wars camp could they see the true appearance of the Star Wars camp. Chapter 2920. Starry Sky Tower. The tower was very tall, at least several thousand feet tall. The surface of the tower emitted a crystal-clear light, revealing an ancient and mysterious aura. Ghost Plume was quite good at reading people's expressions. When he saw Zhuowen staring at the tower in the distance after entering the camp, he quickly introduced it to Zhuowen. Master, this tower is called the Starry Sky Tower. It's the core building of the Starry Sky Camp and also the symbol of the Starry Sky Camp. Zhuowen couldn't help but look at Ghost Plume and ask doubtfully, I don't think this tower is located in the Eastern Starry Sky Camp. It's like this. This tower is located in the center of the 4 camps and not in the Eastern Starry Sky Camp. Ghost Plume replied. Then what is the main purpose of this Starry Sky Tower? Zhuowen asked. Its main purpose is to record the achievements of cultivators in the Starry Sky battlefield. For example, the more foreign races a cultivator kills in the Starry Sky battlefield, and the stronger they are, the more points they will receive. Moreover, the higher the points, the more valuable the treasures you can exchange for in the Starry Sky Tower. It said that as long as you have enough points, you can even exchange for heaven-piercing, godly medicines and divine artifacts. Heaven-piercing godly medicines and divine artifacts can be exchanged. Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he asked excitedly, I heard this rumor from somewhere else, so I'm not too sure. The points required to exchange for heaven-piercing, godly medicines are simply too high. It seems that no one has ever been qualified to exchange for heaven-piercing, godly medicines and divine artifacts of that level, Ghost Plume said with uncertainty. Zhuowen was very excited. He knew that this rumor wasn't baseless. In other words, within the Starry Sky Tower's exchange system, there must be heaven-piercing, godly medicines of that level. Let's go. Let's go take a look at the Starry Sky Tower. Zhuowen waved his hand and led Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia towards the Starry Sky Tower in the distance. Along the way, Zhuowen noticed that there weren't many cultivators in the Starry Sky Camp. In fact, it was a little sparse. Even if they met a small group of cultivators along the way, most of them were talking about the dark ancient city. From the discussions he heard along the way, Zhuowen found out that most of the cultivators in the Universal Camp had gone to the dark ancient city. More than a month ago, Senki Yin announced that Gong Gong's death was in the dark ancient city. Therefore, it attracted the majority of cultivators to explore the dark ancient city. This was also the main reason why there were so few people in the camp. When he arrived in front of the Starry Sky Tower, Zhuowen discovered how majestic and tall the Starry Sky Tower was. Moreover, the aura emitted from the surface of the Starry Sky Tower made his heart throb. He felt that this energy was very mysterious. There were clearly more cultivators around the Starry Sky Tower. At the bottom of the Starry Sky Tower, there was a door that led to the inside of the Starry Sky Tower. Many cultivators were coming in and out of that door. Apart from that, what attracted Zhuowen's attention the most was the Starry Sky Plaza in front of the Starry Sky Tower. There was a huge stone tablet on the plaza. The surface of the stone tablet was crystal clear and sparkled with starlight. It looked as if it was formed purely by starlight. It was very strange. At the top of the stone tablet was a huge standard seal script engraved with the words Starry Sky Contribution Ranking. On the surface of the Starry Sky Contribution Ranking, there were names recorded. These names were arranged in order from top to bottom. The most conspicuous names on the Starry Sky Contribution Ranking were naturally the top 3 names. Not only were the fonts much larger than the others, but the fonts of the top 3 names also emitted bright starlight, like the brightest stars in the night sky. The top 3 names were Zhongli Haoyan, Yi Qidong, and Yi Hanfei. Among these 3 names, Zhuowen was very familiar with Yi Qidong, who was ranked 2nd. He was the number 1 monster in the host region. Zhuowen had met him a few times at the Blue Moon Lake, the cave abode of the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse Sex Ghost Plume. Zhuowen had learned about the Starry Sky Contribution ranking from Ghost Plume. It was ranked according to the contribution of the younger generation that participated in the Starry Sky battlefield. The contribution was directly reflected in the number of points a cultivator had. The more points they had, the higher their ranking. The number 1 on the Starry Sky Contribution ranking, Zhongli Haoyan, had a string of numbers behind her name. This string of numbers was the number of points Zhongli Haoyan had obtained in the Starry Sky battlefield. Zhongli Haoyan had obtained a total of 253,900 points. She was almost 100,000 points higher than the second place, Yi Qidong, who only had 150,000 points. The third place, Yi Hanfei, had around 120,000 points. The difference between him and Yi Qidong wasn't that big. Outside of the top 3, the top 10 cultivators had around 50,000 to 100,000 points. As for those ranked between 10th and 20th, they would have around 50,000 to 30,000 points, and so on. This universal contribution list only had 99 people, and the last person would have around 5,000 points. On the Starry Sky contribution ranking, Zhuowen saw a few familiar names. The 5 great monsters of the host region were basically all on the Starry Sky contribution ranking. Among them, Ghost Plume's ranking wasn't bad. He was in the 30s and had around 23,000 points. Ghost Plume, you said before that if you have enough points in the Starry Sky battlefield, you can really exchange for a Heaven-class elixir? How many points do you need? Zhuowen turned to Ghost Plume and asked. Ghost Plume's eyes flickered. There is indeed such a saying. I heard that if you want to exchange for a Heaven-class elixir or artifact, you have to have more than 1,000,000 points. Zhongli Haoyan, the first place on the Starry Sky contribution ranking, only has around 250,000 points. If you need more than 1,000,000 points to exchange for a Heaven-class elixir, doesn't that mean that no one has ever successfully exchanged for a Heaven-class elixir? Zhuowen was speechless. He felt that Ghost Plume's conditions were too harsh. Although he didn't know how difficult it was to obtain 1,000,000 points, if even the number 1 genius on the Starry Sky contribution ranking couldn't reach 1,000,000 points, it was obvious how difficult it was. Ghost Plume smiled bitterly. That's why it's just a rumor. Since the establishment of the Starry Sky contribution ranking, no one has met the requirements to exchange for a Heaven-class elixir. Then, how do you get these points? Zhuowen asked. There are many ways to get points. The most direct and effective way is to kill foreign races. The more foreign races you kill, the more points you get. Also, if you kill foreign races above your level, the points you get will be doubled. The higher your level, the higher the multiplier, Ghost Plume answered. Zhuowen was a little surprised. He didn't expect the Starry Sky contribution ranking to have such a rule. In other words, the stronger a cultivator was, the more points he could get. Chapter 29-21 Universal Contribution Points List. Master, if you want to accumulate points, you must first obtain a universal token. This universal token is a jade token that records your personal information. At the same time, it is also used to record the points you have accumulated during the battles with the foreign races. Ghost Plume saw that Zhuowen was interested and couldn't help but remind him. Okay, then let's get a universal token first. Zhuowen nodded and followed Ghost Plume into the contribution hall on the first floor of the Universal Tower. It had to be said that the interior of the Universal Tower was very spacious. Moreover, there were more than 10 counters in the hall. At each of these counters, there were small signboards for universal tokens. Although the number of cultivators in the Universal Camp had decreased sharply because of the dark ancient city, there were still many cultivators in the Universal Tower. Basically, they were all queuing up to get their universal tokens. It seems like the temptation of Gongong's place of death is very big. So many cultivators who haven't trained in the Star Wars battlefield are here. Yin Wuxia looked at the long lines and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Generally, cultivators who have trained in the Star Wars battlefield would have their own universal tokens. Naturally, they didn't need to queue up at these counters to get their universal tokens. Zhuowen casually queued at the back of a line. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia had already gotten their universal tokens. Therefore, under Zhuowen's instructions, they waited at the side of the hall. After about 2 hours, it was finally Zhuowen's turn. In front of the counter was a young and beautiful female cultivator. However, this female cultivator looked very impatient, and her tone was a little impatient. "What's your name? What sect are you from?" The female cultivator repeated the same question, mechanically. She didn't even raise her head. "My name is Ma Yujia. I'm a rogue cultivator." The moment Joan said this name, the line next door also said the same name. In an instant, Joan's face froze, and he looked at the line next door. As for the owner of the neighboring team, his voice also froze as he looked towards Joan. Joan saw a fat man, and the fat man also saw Joan. His eyes were filled with confusion at first, but he quickly understood something. His eyes were spitting fire, and he was very angry. The female cultivator at the counter also sensed that something was amiss. She raised her head and looked at Joan, then at the fatty in the next line. "What's wrong with you guys? He actually has the same name and is also a loose cultivator." "Oh, I'm so sorry. I gave the wrong name. I was too excited just now. It's my first time receiving the universal token, so I said the wrong thing." Joan chuckled and continued, "My name is Longwin, an itinerant cultivator." The female cultivator at the counter didn't suspect anything. She glanced at Joan indifferently and quickly engraved the two words Longwin on the surface of the universal token. She casually threw it to Joan and said, 100 high-grade Heaven Path crystals. After Joan paid the 100 high-grade Heaven Path crystals, he took the universal token and left the line. Joan called out to Ghost Plume and Ian Wuxia, who were waiting by the side, and hurriedly walked out of the universal tower. He cursed in his heart. To think that he would bump into this fatty Ma Yujia inside the Starry Sky Tower. His luck was really bad. However, as soon as Joan left the Starry Sky Tower, he was stopped by a fat figure. Looking at the aggressive fatty in front of him, Joan seemed to have just noticed him. He laughed and said, "Oh, so it's Brother Ma. What a coincidence. I actually met Brother Ma here. This is fate." "Fate your ass." Ma Yujia spat. His eyes were full of hatred as he roared, "Joan, you really tricked me. Last time, you deliberately gave me the fake realm-eluding underworld soul flower so that I could be your scapegoat, right? You're so cruel." Ma Yujia's voice was getting louder and louder. His anger was very strong. Many cultivators in the hall were attracted by Ma Yujia's voice and looked over with hostility. Joan hurriedly pulled Ma Yujia away from the Starry Sky Tower. He brought Ma Yujia to a secluded corner and said in a deep voice, "Brother Ma, there are some forces from the 10 Extremities Een Corp sect in this Starry Sky battlefield. It's best if you don't speak carelessly." "Bullshit your mother. Do you think Master Fatty is a retard? You have the nerve to talk to me. After tricking me so badly, you want to let it go so easily? Let me tell you, no way." Ma Yujia snorted and glared at him. "Brother Ma, you've really wronged me. It should be said that we were all tricked by the 10 Extremities Een Corp sect." "This has nothing to do with me," Joan said seriously. Ma Yujia snorted. Seeing that Joan was serious, he became much quieter. "What do you mean?" Ma Yujia said coldly. "I did get the realm-eluding underworld soul flower from the underworld hell. I think the 10 Extremities Een Corp sect put it there in advance to fake the realm-eluding underworld soul flower. Then they probably did it to trick the cultivator who obtained the realm-eluding underworld soul flower. Brother Ma, think about it. I've already given you the destiny-level godly herb and even risked my life back then. Who can guarantee my life and death? Why would I do something to the underworld soul flower? There's no need for that at all." At this point, Joan's eyes revealed a look of pity, as if he had suffered a great grievance. Ghost Plume and Ian Wuxia stood behind him. They secretly thought that Joan was thick-skinned and shameless enough. They praised him countless times in their hearts for his ability to distort the truth. Ma Yujia saw Joan's true feelings and couldn't help but be stunned. He began to believe what Zhuowen said. Are you serious? Ma Yujie asked uncertainly. Of course I'm serious. When have I ever lied to you? Zhuowen sighed. Ma Yujie couldn't help but show a look of disdain. This wasn't the first time Zhuowen talked nonsense to him. I'll believe you for now. However, last time I was almost beaten to death by the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect Master Senki Een and Great Elder Gao Yonghong. I suffered heavy losses. No matter what, you have to compensate me for the physical damage, right? Ma Yujie spread his hands at Zhuowen, planning to ask for compensation. Zhuowen wasn't easy to deal with. Naturally, he wouldn't let Ma Yujie get away with his carelessness. The two of them went back and forth. In the end, Zhuowen took out a Genesis grade divine medicine as compensation. Only then did Ma Yujie's anger completely subside. Ma Yujie twisted his fat body and leaned closer to Zhuowen. He said in a slightly vulgar manner, Brother Zhua, did you come to the star battlefield this time for the dark ancient city? Yes. Isn't Brother Ma here? Zhuowen asked in return. Of course, it's because the corpse of ancestor Shaman Gongong is in the dark ancient city. This is already known by everyone. If it wasn't for this, why would I come here? Wouldn't I have nothing better to do? Ma Yujie said. Then does Brother Ma have any insider information? Zhuowen asked. Chapter 29-22. At the entrance of the dark ancient city. I'm not too sure about the inside information, and I'm not sure if the corpse of ancestral Shaman Gongong really exists in the dark ancient city. After all, this information was released by that old dog Senki Een, so its credibility is questionable. When Ma Yujie mentioned Senki Yin's name, his gaze was unfriendly and he was even gnashing his teeth. When he was chased by Senki Een, he cried for his parents and almost died. One could imagine how much hatred he had for Senki Een. Is that so? That's a pity, but it's fate to be able to meet Brother Ma. How about this? Let's continue to cooperate in this exploration of the dark ancient city. This way, we can take care of each other. Zhuowen suddenly said. Ma Yujie's eyes widened, and he hurriedly waved his hand. Cooperation? Forget it. I'm more suited to be alone. Whenever I cooperate with others, I'm unlucky. Especially when cooperating with you, I'm basically unlucky. Zhuowen's head was full of black lines. This damn fatty really didn't give him any face. He was treating him as a jinx. Even if he really treated him as a jinx, he should be more reserved with his words. It was really awkward to be so direct. Now, many people have already headed to the dark ancient city, and many experts from the foreign races have also arrived. It's said that there was a fierce clash and the cultivators and the foreign races suffered heavy losses. Brother Zhua, when you go to the dark ancient city, you have to be careful. Before Ma Yujie left, he left Zhuowen with these words of warning. It seems that the dark ancient city is very unstable. Ordinary cultivators have a high chance of dying when they enter the dark ancient city. Een Wuxie said with a serious gaze. Gue Ling pointed at the universal contribution ranking in front of the plaza and said, from this ranking, it can be seen that the dark ancient city is in a good place. In the short 2 hours that Master was applying for the universal peak token, there were many people who disappeared from the ranking and were replaced by new names. This means that several geniuses on the universal contribution ranking have died in the past 2 hours. Zhuowen nodded. Cultivators who were able to enter the Universal Contribution Board were all geniuses that were 1 in 10,000. Normally, it would be very difficult for them to fall. But now, several of them had fallen within 2 hours. It could be seen how fierce the battle in the dark ancient city was. Not long after Ma Yujie left, Zhuowen also set off for the ancient city of darkness. The dark ancient city was located in the center of the Star Wars battlefield and was more than 10 days away from the star camping ground. The space-time roulette that Zhuowen used was very fast. It only took him 5 or 6 days to reach the periphery of the dark ancient city. The environment around the dark ancient city was mostly a meteorite belt formed by countless black gravel. The area of the meteorite belt was very large, and it expanded outward layer by layer, as if it would never end. In the center of the meteorite belt, there was an extremely dense and evil black energy. This black energy was like chaos. It spread across the central area in an irregular manner and occupied most of the space there. Zhuo looked over and vaguely saw the outline of a giant black city within the black energy. It was just that the black energy was like a black fog that completely covered the details of the giant city. He could only see a very vague outline. Zhuo knew that the giant city hidden in the black fog was the destination of his trip, the dark ancient city. The moment he entered the meteorite belt, Zhuo also noticed that there were many streams of light shooting towards him at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, the target of these streams of light was the dark ancient city in the center of the meteorite belt. Zhuo's eyes were sharp. He noticed that the streams of light around him were not only human, but also foreign race figures. As he continued to get closer to the dark ancient city, Zhuo discovered no less than 10 battles. Among them, there were battles between cultivators and foreign races. Zhuo basically did not intervene in the battles between cultivators. However, Zhuo actively intervened in the battles between cultivators and foreign races. Moreover, he very straightforwardly exterminated the foreign races. After all, killing foreign races gave him points. What he lacked the most now was points. He hoped to reach 1 million points as soon as possible and exchange them for the transcending heaven-grade spirit medicine he needed. However, the foreign races Zhuo encountered along the way were too weak. They were basically trash in the first step of Dao confirming. Zhuo only got 10 points for killing one of them. All along the way, Zhuo basically used lightning-fast methods to annihilate all the Xeno race beings he encountered. When he arrived at the dark ancient city, he'd already annihilated almost 100 Xeno race beings, and the points on the starry sky token had reached almost 1,000 points. Zhuo felt a little regretful. The foreign races he encountered along the way were all in the first step of Dao confirming. They were too weak. If he kept killing like this, when would he be able to collect 1 million points? The gate of the dark ancient city was a hollow gate formed by 2 huge black iron pillars. The top of the 2 iron pillars was connected by a black iron wire. At this moment, a group of thousands of people gathered in front of the gate of the dark ancient city. This group of people were basically all human cultivators. On the surface of the gate of the dark ancient city, there was an incomparably black barrier. This black barrier was very hard and had a tortoiseshell pattern on its surface. On both sides of the gate, there were 2 figures guarding it. One of them was a human cultivator, while the other was a merman with a black horn between his eyebrows and a body covered in black scales. Zhuo brought Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia to the gate and immediately heard the angry voices of the human cultivators in front of the gate. Why can't you let us in just because we are rogue cultivators? Do rogue cultivators have no rights? The dark ancient city is a dangerous place in the starry sky battlefield. It is not the backyard of the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect. What right does the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect have to shut us out? Yes, the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect is a little too overbearing. The voices of the crowd were protesting and criticizing the human cultivator guarding the gate. However, the merman crossed his arms and looked like he was watching a good show. Zhuo landed in the crowd and listened for a while. He immediately knew why these people were gathered here. It turned out that these people were all rogue cultivators. The 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect had stipulated that rogue cultivators who did not belong to any sect did not have the right to enter the dark ancient city. Obviously, they did not want too many cultivators to come and plunder the dark ancient city. It should be known that in the entire Xianmi heavenly region, the largest number of rogue cultivators happened to be these rogue cultivators who did not belong to any sect. Although rogue cultivators were much weaker than the cultivators of other sects, their numbers were much greater than the disciples of other sections. If they swarmed into the dark ancient city, they would definitely divide up the treasures that might appear in the dark ancient city. After all, although the dark ancient city was full of danger, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. The probability of treasures appearing in the dark ancient city was also very high. Chapter 29-23. The Fat Man Assuming the Tiger's Might Overbearing? You're right. Our 10 extremities in corpse sect is just that, overbearing. If you have the ability, then break the formation restriction in front of the gate for me to see. If you can break it, then I'll let you in. The human cultivator guarding the gate looked like a middle-aged man in his 40s. There were deep crow's feet at the corners of his eyes. Of course, Zhuowen knew that the middle-aged man's actual age was definitely much older than his 40s. At this moment, the middle-aged man's eyes were full of disdain. Even his tone was full of provocation and disdain. The middle-aged man's tone immediately angered the rogue cultivators who were blocked by the formation restriction. They all cursed him for being shameless. Zhuowen also knew that the middle-aged man's name was Gao Yi from the curses of the crowd. He was an ordinary deacon of the 10 extremities in corpse sect. He was not strong and was only a fated master. Among the rogue cultivators blocking the gate, there were many who were stronger than Gao Yi. However, due to the formation restriction outside the gate, they could only sullenly endure Gao Yi's disdainful gaze. If it was just the middle-aged man's mockery, the crowd would not be so angry. However, there was a foreign race standing beside the middle-aged man. Moreover, the foreign race was looking at them with a mocking gaze. This made them feel humiliated. One had to know that the war between the foreign race and the human race had been going on for countless years. The cultivators of the Xian Mi heavenly domain hated the foreign race to the core. Now, this middle-aged man was standing guard at the gate with the outsiders, refusing to let them in. This was unacceptable to them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While the rogue cultivators were in an uproar, 3 streaks of light flew over from afar and finally landed in front of the gate. These were 3 mermen covered in scales. The 3 mermen did not care about the rogue cultivators who were blocked outside the gate. Instead, they went straight to the gate and said a few words to the merman guarding the gate. The merman nodded and let the 3 mermen in. Seeing this scene, the crowd was in an uproar. They all looked at Gao Yi angrily and questioned him for letting the foreign race in, but not letting them in. Gao Yi was high and mighty, his eyes full of disdain as he said, "What do you all know? The dark ancient city is extremely dangerous. Most of the Dao Palace level forces in our Xian Mi Sky Domain's 4 Dao domains have already come to an agreement with the foreign races, forming a temporary alliance. Before we find the corpse of Grand Wizard Gonggong, we will not attack. Instead, we will cooperate to explore and resist the unknown dangers in the dark ancient city. I'll be honest with you. The dangers in the outer perimeter of the dark ancient city have been swept clean by the Alliance. Now, as long as you wander around the outer perimeter of the dark ancient city, you won't be in too much danger. Instead, you'll be able to reap some benefits and rewards. Could it be that you rogue cultivators who don't belong to any sects want to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor? I think you're dreaming. Now get the hell out of here. You're all a disgrace to us human cultivators by gathering here." Gao Yi's voice was dripping with sarcasm as he raised his voice, intending to chase away the numerous rogue cultivators at the door. "Yo, you humans are really shameless. You don't even have the qualifications to enter the dark ancient city, yet you still gather here. Your skin is thicker than the city walls." The merman standing not far from Gao Yi revealed a disdainful smile as he began to mock them. "Thorpe, when you're ridiculing, it's best if you know who you're ridiculing. The ones who are shameless are these loose cultivators. Every single one of us sect disciples is a proud son of heaven. How can these loose cultivators compare to us? In my opinion, you human cultivators are all the same. What sect? The merman Thorpe sneered. Gao Yi's expression was ugly as he said coldly, Thorpe, aren't you being too presumptuous? At the very least, your merman race is still cooperating with our sect. Cooperation is cooperation. I'm mocking you because I want to. There's no need to implicate our cooperation. Our primitive heavenly realm believes in power above all else. As long as your fist is big enough, you can do whatever you want. You're the boss. Gao Yi, if you're not happy, you can fight with me directly. I'll accompany you to the end. It's really boring to talk like this. Thorpe chuckled. Gao Yi frowned slightly. He glanced at Thorpe and fell silent instead. Thorpe's cultivation was about the same as Gao Yi's, around the level of a master of destiny. However, Thorpe was a foreign race. His physical body was powerful, and his cultivation and physical strength were often much stronger than human cultivators of the same level. Unless they were monstrous geniuses with terrifying battle prowess, ordinary human cultivators were often much weaker than foreign race cultivators of the same level. Gao Yi admitted that he was not strong enough and was not Thorpe's opponent, so he easily admitted defeat. You really are a coward. You humans are all the same. Am I right? Thorpe sneered. His laughter was very savage and unrestrained. Gao Yi's face flushed red, but he did not dare to flare up at Thorpe. He could not help but vent his anger on the numerous rogue cultivators outside. He roared, You bunch of trash! Why aren't you scramming yet? If you don't scram, I'll activate the offensive restriction on this formation. Many rogue cultivators were unable to restrain their anger. This Gao Yi was really too cowardly. He was a guy who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Zhuowen shook his head. He felt that Gao Yi was really a coward. Just as he was thinking about whether or not he should take action to break the formation, a voice suddenly rang out. Then Zhuowen saw a familiar fat figure trying to squeeze out of the crowd. I say, you're called Gao Yi, right? This fat lord will give you a chance. Immediately open the formation and let this fat lord in. Otherwise, your fate will be very miserable. Zhuowen took a closer look. Wasn't this fat figure Ma Yujia, who he had just separated from in the Starry Sky Pagoda? At this moment, Ma Yujia's face was very serious. His body exuded a dignified aura. For a moment, many rogue cultivators present were stunned. Many people discussed spiritedly. A cultivator with such an imposing aura probably had an extraordinary background. After all, this kind of aura was not something a trivial rogue cultivator could possess. Gao Yi was also intimidated. He revealed a hesitant look and asked uncertainly, Who are you? Your grandpa Ma is me. When your grandpa Ma and your sect master Senki Yin exchange pointers, you weren't even born yet. You can't even recognize me now. Is there shit in your head? Chapter 29-24. Arrogant for a moment. Everyone present involuntarily retreated, distancing themselves from Ma Yujia. This fatty was labeled as mentally ill in everyone's hearts. Zhuowen also consciously retreated, but his thoughts were different from the others. When Ma Yujia was spouting nonsense, he had already discovered that this fatty had secretly placed 2 array flags on both sides of the door. Furthermore, although the fatty's hands seemed to be waving randomly, he was actually making hand seals to break the array. He knew that the fatty was stalling for time to break the array. If Zhuowen wasn't wrong, then the array formation set up on the gates of the dark ancient city was a Genesis grade array formation. With Ma Yujia's array formation skills, it wouldn't be difficult to break it. However, breaking the array formation would still require a certain amount of time. Also, you son of a B****, better watch out for me. This is my brother, an existence that even your sect master has to address respectfully as grandpa. Now that you're blocking us outside, you're just looking for trouble for yourself. Fortunately, your sect master isn't here. Otherwise, your head would be kicked by me like a ball. Ma Yujia's eyes were sharp. He immediately saw Zhuowen's figure, who wanted to retreat with the crowd. He immediately pointed his right hand at Zhuowen, his voice full of pride. Zhuowen's body stiffened, but he was cursing in his heart. "Brother, your sister." This damn fatty was indeed a narrow-minded guy. He was planning to drag him down with him. He was probably trying to take revenge on him for tricking this fatty. Sure enough, the moment Ma Yujie pointed at Zhuowen, the gazes of those rogue cultivators converged on Zhuowen. Then, they hurriedly retreated a large distance away from Zhuowen. Obviously, in their eyes, Zhuowen had also been labeled as a mentally ill brother. The veins on Gao Yi's forehead bulged, and his eyes were bloodshot. He glared at the fatty in front of the door and said, "Damn fatty, who do you think you are? A mere heaven's mandate master dares to call our sect master brother? Where does your confidence come from? And where does your intelligence come from? How can you say something so retarded?" Zhuowen glanced at Ma Yujie and shook his head inwardly. He refused to believe that this fatty's cultivation base was only that of the mandate of heaven. The last time he had met this fatty in the 10 Extremes Corp sect, he had not been able to see through this fatty's cultivation. Now, the aura he was releasing was only that of the destined master. He knew that the fatty must have deliberately disguised his cultivation level. As for the fatty's exact cultivation level, he still had not figured it out. However, he knew that the fatty's strength was probably not weaker than his. In fact, the fatty might even be slightly stronger than him. Otherwise, the fatty would not have been able to escape the pursuit of Senki Yin, Gao Yanghong, and the 10 ultimate Corp sect experts. "I'm just teasing you. If you're not convinced, then come out and bite me. What are you hiding in there like an egg?" Ma Yujie was very despicable. He deliberately moved his fat head closer to the door and even used his right hand to slap Gao Yi's right cheek. He taunted arrogantly, "I'll stand here and let you hit me. If a coward like you has the guts, then hit my right cheek. Hit it hard, hit it lightly, and you'll be a coward." Gao Yi was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. However, he did not lose his rationality. He knew that even if he went out now and hit the fatty, there was a group of rogue cultivators outside. He would probably be surrounded and beaten up if he went out now. "Good damn fatty, you're arrogant enough. Today, I'll let you see the price of angering me." Gao Yi snorted coldly and took out a compass-like formation plate. Immediately, his right hand formed a seal. Suddenly, the formation in front of the door emitted a blazing white light. The energy within the formation also became violent, like a fierce beast that was about to awaken from its slumber. "Haha, damn fatty, you're screwed." This is a god of creation spell formation. It's combined with a powerful offensive formation that can rival the normal attacks of the average god of creation. You're just a piece of trash that's destined to die under the attacks of this formation very soon. Do you have any last words? Gao Yi roared with laughter as he looked at Ma Yujie with disdain and contempt in his eyes. Ma Yujie chuckled coldly as he looked at Gao Yi as if he were looking at an idiot. "You piece of trash. I'm not the one who should be leaving behind any last words. You should be the one leaving behind any last words." Ma Yujie chuckled coldly, and he dropped all pretense. Zhuowen nodded internally. He knew that Ma Yujie's plan to break the formation had already succeeded. Now, this god of creation spell formation was completely under the fatty's control. "You're about to die and you're still quibbling? Die." Gao Yi flew into a rage out of humiliation, and he formed a final hand seal. Immediately, the white light from the formation in front of the door reached its most intense state. Immediately afterward, an extremely terrifying attack erupted. "Haha, you're dead meat." Gao Yi threw his head back and roared with laughter as he watched the scorching white light shoot out as a streak of light. However, Gao Yi's face soon stiffened. This was because he discovered that the streak of white light did not shoot towards the fatty in front of the door. Instead, it shot towards him. "Gah! What's going on?" Fear filled Gao Yi's eyes. Soon after, he he was completely enveloped by the streak of white light. With a wail of agony, he completely lost all signs of life as he was blasted into nothingness by the streak of white light. The scene immediately fell silent. This unexpected outcome had stunned everyone. Meanwhile, the merman Thorpe returned to his senses. The corners of his eyes constantly twitched, and he immediately distanced himself from the door. What the hell was this formation? The attack it had unleashed was actually aimed at him. Was this murder or suicide? He had to distance himself as much as possible. Otherwise, he would follow in Gao Yi's footsteps. Outside the door, the independent cultivators who had retreated into the distance also stared at this scene in confusion. Clearly, they had never thought that the final outcome would actually be like this. As expected of Brother Ma, your formation skills have actually reached such a level. Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie's back with a rather solemn gaze. He discovered that this damn fatty's formation skills had improved a little compared to when he was in the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect. He was actually able to break the Genesis level formation at the entrance of the dark ancient city in such a short period of time and control it in his own hands. Zhuowen possessed the profound meaning of the infinite primordial chaos, which could break all techniques. He was confident that he could break the formation within the door in a short period of time. However, it was somewhat difficult to reverse the formation and control it in his own hands. He was currently unable to do so. Clearly, Ma Yujie's formation skills were higher than his by a level. Hey, little trash, why are you retreating? Now that you know this fatty's honorable identity, let me in now. Otherwise, you'll end up like that nothingness. Ma Yujie patted his round belly and grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. When the merman Thorpe saw Ma Yujie's row of white teeth, he inexplicably felt a chill in his heart. This was not the first time Gao Yi had used the formation restriction of the door. Previously, there had been some unruly independent cultivators who wanted to rely on their cultivation to force their way in, but they were all destroyed by Gao Yi using the formation. However, just now, when Gao Yi activated the attack formation again, he was the one who was destroyed. It was really strange. Chapter 29-25. Barging in, you can come in alone. Thorpe pondered for a while before finally deciding to let the fatty in. He felt that the fatty should be an array expert, so he didn't dare to provoke him. It was better to let him pass. That's more like it. A little fish like you is sensible, unlike that idiot who didn't even recognize me. He's really short-sighted. Ma Yujie swaggered into Thorpe's open door and patted him on the shoulder. The latter could only force a smile and didn't dare to be rash. Zhuowen knew that this was an opportunity and hurriedly followed, but Thorpe had already closed the door's restriction. I'm his brother, let me in, Zhuowen said indifferently. Thorpe smiled apologetically. Just as he was about to open the door, Ma Yujie waved his hand and said seriously, Little fish, is there something wrong with your brain? When did I say that this guy is my brother? Close the door and guard this door for me, understand? Thorpe's face stiffened. He slowly withdrew his right hand that was about to open the door and hurriedly nodded and bowed to Ma Yujie. Not bad, do a good job. I have high hopes for you. Ma Yujie patted Thorpe's shoulder and swaggered off, heading towards the depths of the dark ancient city. Zhuowen. Numerous rogue cultivators. Zhuowen's face instantly fell. This damn fatty's skin was really too thick. He was trying to kill him without paying with his life. Those who have nothing to do with this, scram. Don't gather here. As soon as Ma Yujie left, Thorpe immediately regained his arrogant nature and impatiently waved at Zhuowen and the others, telling them to get lost. Do you know who I am? Zhuowen arrived at the door and said calmly, I don't care who you are, as long as you're not that fatty's brother. Thorpe said coldly, Yes, that fatty is indeed not my brother, but I'm not someone you can afford to offend. Zhuowen's eyes were cold as he clenched his right fist. The surface of his fist emitted a sparkling and translucent light, and a vast and terrifying aura was exposed. Rumble. Zhuowen fiercely slammed his fist in front of the door. Immediately after, an explosive sound like that of a mountain collapsing and the earth splitting erupted. Soon after, countless cracks began to appear on the surface of the barrier. Finally, with a cracking sound, the entire barrier was destroyed by Zhuowen's brute force. Everyone was dumbfounded. Just now, the fatty had used array formation Dao to control the array formation restriction. His methods were already powerful enough. However, the young man in front of him was even more powerful. He directly used brute force to shatter the restriction in front of the gate into countless pieces. Thorpe let out a pained cry and fell to the ground. His entire body trembled as he watched the young man slowly walk through the door amidst the countless fragments of the array formation. What kind of freak was this guy? This was a god of creation stage formation. Even the average god of creation wouldn't be able to shatter it with brute force. But this young man had done it, and it didn't seem to be strenuous at all. Could it be that this guy was a master of creation? Of course, Zhuowen wasn't a master of creation. He had merely found the weak point of the array formation restriction in front of the gate. Moreover, this array formation had already been broken by Ma Yujie before and was now under his control. After Ma Yujie left, many flaws had appeared in the array formation, and its power was much weaker than before. Zhuowen had precisely grasped the flaw in this array formation. With a full-powered strike, it wasn't difficult for him to shatter this array formation. You! Thorpe was so frightened that he kept retreating, cursing inwardly. What was going on today? The arrival of the fatty was already terrifying enough. Now, an even more freakish person had arrived. He had actually shattered the array formation in front of the gate. This was really too unlucky. You what? Die. Zhuowen cast a sidelong glance at Thorpe, who looked like he had seen a ghost. His right hand formed a claw and reached out towards Thorpe. Thorpe howled, his entire body erupting with the power of water as he unhesitatingly began to flee. Unfortunately, Thorpe was only a Heaven's Mandate Lord. In Zhuowen's eyes, he was far too weak. Zhuowen grabbed Thorpe with his claw. However, just as Zhuowen was about to crush Thorpe's body, Thorpe immediately revealed his true form, a shark. Thorpe's entire body was covered in a disgusting mucus. He actually managed to slip away from Zhuowen's claw and swiftly fled into the void. Oh, your escape skill is not bad. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with surprise, but he wasn't surprised. His right hand formed a fist and punched out. Instantly, the space around him for tens of billions of li began to ripple. This fist contained the power of space-time, reversing space-time so that nothing in the surrounding space-time could hide. Sure enough, in a certain space-time, there was a miserable scream. Thorpe, who had fled into the void, fell to the ground not too far away. His entire body was drenched in blood and constantly twitching. He was already gasping for air and was not far from death. Zhuowen casually sent out a divine flame and burned Thorpe to ashes, earning some points in his Starry Sky card. However, these points were very few. After all, Thorpe was simply too weak. He was only a Heaven's Mandate Lord. After killing Thorpe, Zhuowen ignored the dumbfounded rogue cultivators behind him. Instead, he turned into a stream of light and entered the ancient city of darkness. In front of the gate, the rogue cultivators who had just come back to their senses were pleasantly surprised. The seal on the gate has been removed. We can also enter the ancient city of darkness. This is a rare opportunity. Everyone, hurry and enter. It was unknown who said this, but everyone swarmed into the dark ancient city. In the depths of the ancient city of darkness, in front of a massive mountain range, a large group of people was stationed. Among them were human cultivators as well as foreign race experts. However, the human cultivators and foreign race experts were clearly stationed on two sides, each minding their own business. At this moment, in the camp of the foreign race experts, the Merman race's representative, Sauron, had a very ugly expression. In his right hand, a black bead had already shattered. "Commander Sauron, why did you call me here?" A strong merman came in from outside the tent. He looked respectfully at Sauron and asked in a deep voice, "Li Yong, Thorpe's life pearl has shattered." Sauron said with a gloomy expression, "What? Thorpe was killed. How is that possible? Who is so bold as to kill a member of my merman race at the gate of the ancient city of darkness?" Li Yong said in shock, "Someone did it. Now, go to the entrance of the ancient city of darkness for me and help me find out who is so bold as to kill my brother." Sauron said with a murderous aura. Li Yong nodded, accepted Sauron's order, and left the tent. Although Thorpe was a very ordinary warrior in the merman race, he had a good older brother, Sauron. Sauron was a genius in the merman race who received a lot of attention and had a very high status. It was because of Sauron that Thorpe was qualified to come to the ancient city of darkness and was even sent to guard the gate of the ancient city of darkness. Because this was a job that was basically not dangerous, Sauron was also wary of Thorpe's low strength and was not willing to let him take the risk to protect him. Chapter 29:26.4 Kills. What rich energy! As expected of the dark ancient city, the moment Zhuowen entered the dark ancient city, he could feel that the energy inside was extremely rich. It was many times richer than the outside world. The interior of the dark ancient city was basically filled with scattered black walls and ruins. It looked as if this used to be a grand and prosperous city, but because of an unknown war, the grand city had been reduced to ruins. The dark ancient city was very spacious and filled with layers of black fog. If it weren't for Zhuowen's powerful consciousness, it would have been very difficult to distinguish the direction in front of him. Zhuowen moved forward at a very fast speed. Although he knew that there were many good things in the periphery of the dark ancient city, with his current wealth, he really didn't care about the things in the periphery of the dark ancient city. And the things that he cared about were at least at the Genesis level or above. Treasures of this level were obviously not likely to appear in the periphery of the dark ancient city. As Zhuowen continued to fly forward, he realized that there were several streams of light following him closely behind. To Zhuowen's surprise, although he was not flying at full speed, his speed was not something an ordinary cultivator could keep up with. However, he did not manage to shake off the several streams of light behind him. Clearly, they were not simple people. Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he stopped in front of them. The moment he stopped, the streams of light behind him also stopped, maintaining a safe distance from Zhuowen. Behind Zhuowen were 3 cultivators, 2 men and 1 woman. One of the men was an old man while the other was a young-looking youngster. As for the woman, she looked very young, probably around 17 or 18 years old. She had a pair of blinking big eyes that revealed a sense of purity, making people have a good impression of her at first glance. "Why are the 3 of you following me?" Zhuowen's eyes were calm as he looked at the 3 people in front of him and asked. With Zhuowen's eyesight, he could naturally see that these 3 people had come from the main entrance. They should be the cultivators from the group of rogue cultivators. The old man cupped his hands respectfully and said, "Brother, we would like to travel with you. Is that okay?" "Sorry, I'm used to traveling alone. I don't plan on forming a team." Zhuowen bluntly refused. The old man's face showed obvious disappointment, but the young man beside the old man looked inexperienced and said impulsively, "Hey, are you looking down on us just because you're strong? My grandfather is an eternal lord expert. Although you're strong, you're not much stronger than my grandfather. You should know that the dark ancient city is an extremely dangerous place in the starry sky battlefield. The risk of a person dying is very high. With our help, you will naturally get twice the result for half the effort. Cooperating with us will only bring you benefits. Little of the olds. He is. On the other hand, the young girl was curiously sizing up Zhuowen, as if she was very interested in Zhuowen. "Big brother, my grandfather is really powerful. If you go to the dark ancient city with us, it will be much easier. I'm not lying to you. Ame never lies. The young girl's big eyes were clear and pure. She was like a little sister next door. At first glance, one would have a good impression of her. As she spoke, the young girl trotted over to Zhuowin, and her jade-like hand reached out to pull Zhuowin. Zhuowin narrowed his eyes and slowly stepped back. Although he didn't feel the slightest killing intent from the young girl, he felt that something was wrong. Big brother, do you dislike Ame? Seeing Zhuowin step back, the young girl's tender body stiffened. Her beautiful big eyes were slightly red, like a pear blossom in the rain. I'm really sorry. I've already said that I'm used to traveling alone. As for cooperation, there's no need to talk about it. Zhuowin said indifferently. Oh, Ame was rude. Big brother, I'm sorry. The young girl pouted. Her big eyes were full of resentment. She bowed deeply to Zhuowin to express her apology. However, Zhuowin felt that something was wrong. An inexplicable chill filled his body, causing all the hair on his body to stand on end. Immediately, he found that the young girl in front of him who bowed to him directly exploded, forming countless blood-colored energies. These blood-colored energies were like meteors. They quickly outlined around Zhuowin and formed a blood-colored barrier. Whoosh! A blood-colored light flickered behind Zhuowin. Zhuowin noticed it in advance. He took a step and dodged the blood-colored light behind him. Immediately, he focused his eyes and found that the blood-colored light turned out to be a blood-colored dagger. Zhuowin was no stranger to this blood-colored dagger. Wasn't it the weapon commonly used by the blood prison assassins? Moreover, this blood-colored dagger was covered with very mysterious patterns. The surface of these patterns was filled with an aura that even Zhuowin was afraid of. There was no doubt that this blood-colored dagger was much more advanced and powerful than the killing swords used by the blood prison assassins. Obviously, the person who attacked was definitely an expert of the blood prison. Clang! Similarly, a blood-colored light swept out from Zhuowin's sleeve and slashed at the blood-colored dagger that suddenly swept over, producing a rather ear-piercing sound of metal clashing. The blood-colored light was the blood immortal sword. Zhuowin took the opportunity to quickly retreat. Only then did he clearly see that the person who attacked him from behind was an old woman with white hair and a bumpy face. This old woman's face was ferocious, like a malicious spirit. You're quite vigilant. You actually escaped my sneak attack. You're much smarter than the Lord of Profound Secrets I've assassinated before. I like it. Although this old woman looked very ugly, her voice was as childish as a child's. Moreover, this voice was not unfamiliar to Zhuowin. It was the voice of the young girl just now. Obviously, the young girl just now should be this old woman in disguise. 4th kill. Zhuowin narrowed his eyes and quickly noticed the word for on the cuff of the old woman's right hand. Obviously, this old woman was 4th kill of the blood prison's 7 kills. Zhuowin was very surprised. He had just killed 5th kill, 6th kill, and 7th kill a few days ago, and the blood prison actually immediately sent 4th kill. This action was too fast. Are you avenging 5th kill and the others? Zhuowin asked with a gloomy look. 5th kill? You met 5th kill and the others? 5th kill and the others are really trash. They found you, but couldn't kill you. If it weren't for the aura of the blood of my blood prison assassins on you, I wouldn't have known that you were the target of my blood prison. 4th kill said sinisterly. Zhuowin was speechless. It turned out that 4th kill was not sent by the blood prison to kill him. It turned out that he had sensed the aura of the blood prison assassins on him. However, on second thought, Zhuowin felt that this was reasonable. After all, he had only killed 5th kill and the others a few days ago. No matter how fast the blood prison moved, it was impossible to send another member of the 7 kills to kill him in just a few days. Chapter 29-27 Li Yongwush. While Zhuowin was deep in thought, The old man and the young man not far away had already removed their disguises and rushed out to attack Zhuan. Their speed was very fast, and they did not show any mercy. The old man and the young man were not weak. They were roughly at the peak of the eternal overlord realm. With the strength of the blood prison assassins, they had the ability to assassinate an early-stage creator. However, in front of Zhuo, these two blood prison assassins were no threat to him. "Get lost!" Zhuo snorted coldly and clenched his hands into fists. His body emitted a crystal-clear light, and a violent aura surged out. Boom! Zhuo performed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique with both hands and blasted out both fists at the old man and the young man. The old man and the young man felt the terrifying power of Zhuo's fist. Their faces changed, and they twisted their bodies like agile snakes, trying to avoid Zhuo's terrifying fist. Unfortunately, Zhuo had already anticipated their sudden change in direction. His fist transformed into a claw and quickly grabbed at the two of them. The old man and the young man were helpless. Seeing Zhuo's claw coming at them, they knew that they could only face it head-on. It was obviously impossible to avoid it. Crack! Unfortunately, the moment the old man and the young man collided with Zhuo's claw, the blood-red daggers in their hands were instantly shattered. Then, Zhuo's claw mercilessly smashed at their chests. A terrifying force erupted, and the old man and the young man's chests instantly caved in. They screamed and were sent flying backward, crashing into the ruins not far away. Looking at the two dying and twitching bodies, their injuries were probably extremely serious. Although they were not dead, they were almost half dead. Bang! At this moment, Sisha had blasted the blood immortal sword away. She happened to see the scene, and her pupils shrank. Although she had long expected that this boy's strength wasn't ordinary, she didn't expect him to be so strong. Her two subordinates weren't weak and were ranked in the upper echelons of blood prison. But in front of this boy, they couldn't even take a single blow. The blood immortal sword returned to Zhuo's side. Its body was full of bumps and holes, and its brilliance was dim. Apparently, the blood immortal sword was extremely embarrassed by Sisha and was now crying to Zhuo, "You go back to the outside world first. I will avenge you. Let this old woman remember that not everyone can beat my people. Since she did it, she must pay a terrible price." Zhuo Wen's voice was cold. The blood immortal sword clearly understood. With a buzz, it entered the macro world. "What did you say?" Sisha was crazy. Looking at Zhuo, her eyes were very unkind. Although her appearance was indeed that of an old woman, her status in the blood prison was very high, and no one had ever dared to call her an old woman in front of her. Although fourth kill looked very disgusting, she was still a woman. No woman could stand being called an old woman by others. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called you an old woman." Hearing Zhuo's words, Sisha's face became slightly better. She said coldly, "Don't think that I will forgive you just because you said a few words of apology. Today you will still die, but I may make your death look better. You may have misunderstood. I really shouldn't have called you an old woman. I should have called you a dead old woman, because you are going to die soon." Zhuo immediately interrupted Sisha's voice. His eyes were full of murderous intent, and all the power of the Peak Pengu's sacred body burst out from his body. He bounced his feet and burst out like an arrow. Wherever he passed, a terrible white cloud dissipated. It was very frightening. "Ah, little bastard, I must kill you today. How dare you insult me?" Quadruple Killer was in a frenzy. His figure was erratic, leaving only a blurry, bloody shadow in the void. Zhuo was awe-inspiring and fearless. He swung out his fists and executed the Dao, slaughtering hegemonic arts. It was as if he was above the Heaven Dao, and every punch he blasted out basically accurately smashed onto Sisha's drifting figure. Sisha was a little mad. At the same time, she was also a little shocked. She didn't expect that Zhuo would know her position in advance every time. Moreover, he would throw a punch that landed on her body, forcing her to defend herself. What shocked her even more was Zhou strength. This guy was clearly just Lord Xuanji, but the power of his punches was very strong. Every time she took a blow, her hands almost became numb. She really couldn't figure out how a mere Lord Xuanji could have such terrifying combat strength. She was Si Sha of the Blood Prison. Her strength was already at the peak of the Creator Realm, and she would soon break through to the half-step Creator Realm. Her assassination methods and killing techniques were rare in the world. It was difficult to find a match. In the past, she had even killed an early-stage Creator Realm expert. Now, however, she was actually evenly matched with a cultivator from Lord Xuanji. This was not AF * King Dream, was it? Zhou was also quite surprised. His Pangu's sacred body was still at the peak of the 5-star level. The strength of his every move was very terrifying. He had once guessed that with the current strength of his Pangu's sacred body, he could fight an early-stage Creator Realm expert. Of course, he might not be able to defeat one. However, it would be very difficult for an early-stage Creator Realm expert to kill him. Si Sha was only at the peak of the Creator Realm. He had thought that it would not be difficult to get rid of Si Sha. Now, it seemed that he had thought too much. Si Sha's combat strength was very terrifying, especially her ghost-like movement technique. Sometimes it was difficult to catch her. It had to be said that Si Sha's strength was much stronger than Si Sha, and Si Sha combined. This made Zhou heart sink. Si Sha of the Blood Prison's 7 killers was already so difficult to deal with. Then, wouldn't the top 3 killers be stronger than Si Sha? In other words, if he faced Si Sha this time, he was afraid that he would not be a match for him. He would have to use his real trump card. Bang! 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 The battle between Zhou and Si Sha became more and more violent. Many nearby cultivators did not dare to get close to the battle range of the two of them. They were afraid that they would be involved in the aftermath of the battle and die without a burial place. Li Yang led 5 merfolk elites and aggressively walked towards the entrance of the dark ancient city. He wanted to know which bold cultivator dared to kill their mermaids. If he were to find out, he would definitely chop the culprit into pieces. However, when Li Yang approached the periphery not far from the entrance, he felt violent energy, fluctuations coming from not far away. Li Yang's expression changed slightly. He was familiar with these violent energy fluctuations. Someone should be fighting. Originally, Li Yang did not pay attention to ordinary battles. He did not even bother to look at them. However, at this moment, the battle fluctuations were very strong. Li Yang was sure that this was at least a battle of the Creator Realm. The Creator Realm was an almighty in the 3rd step of Tao validation. Their strength was unfathomable. Whether it was the Xian Mi heavenly domain or the primitive heavenly domain, such an expert was already considered an expert standing at the peak. Chapter 29-28 Expose the truth. What Li Yang was puzzled about was that this was clearly only the periphery of the dark ancient city. Why would there be such a great battle between experts of this level? Li Yang naturally didn't believe that it was for treasures. There were indeed a lot of good things in the periphery of the dark ancient city, but they were nothing to 3rd step Tao validation experts. Li Yang felt that it was ridiculous to fight over treasures outside the dark ancient city. My lord! When the 5 merfolk elites behind Li Yang saw that Li Yang had stopped, they looked at him in confusion, seeking his opinion. Go. Let's go over and take a look. I want to see what could cause a fight between 2 3rd-step powerhouses. With a wave of his hand, Li Yang led his 5 subordinates towards the scene where Zhou and Foreskills were fighting. Is it the 4th of the Blood Prison's 7 kills? At a glance, Li Yang saw the figure of the old woman holding the blood-red short sword. His eyes were filled with surprise. Although he was a merman from the great desolate heaven domain, and not a human from the Xianmi heaven domain, he still knew about the various factions in the Xianmi heaven domain. This blood prison was a very special faction in the Xianmi Heaven domain, so Liang naturally knew about it. He also knew that for an assassin like Quadruple Kill to be dispatched, the target that Quadruple Kill wanted to kill was probably not ordinary and had a complicated background. However, the moment Liang saw Zhuowen, his face froze. This was because he realized that the young man who was fighting Quad Kill didn't have a strong aura. He was just Lord Xuanji. Holy sh*T, what's going on? Isn't it supposed to be a creator? Why is it just the Lord of Profound Secrets? Li Yang found this to be inconceivable. How could a mere Lord of Profundity be so powerful that he could fight against a peak creator like Si Sha without being defeated? And what was the background of this young man? Not only Li Yang, but many of the surrounding cultivators who were attracted by the aftermath of the battle also felt incredulous. Zhuowen's cultivation aura was too weak, but his strength was so strong. This went against common sense. Behind Liang, one of his subordinates suddenly said, "Lord Liang, this human's main strength isn't his cultivation, but his physical strength." Liang narrowed his eyes. Only now did he begin to notice that the main power of the youth with 2 scars was indeed from his fleshly body that was emitting a sparkling light, and not from the energy of the heavenly Tao that human cultivators used. This human's physical body is very unusual. He's so strong. I'm afraid that even the strongest race in the primeval heavenly realm, the shaman race, which is known for their physical bodies, probably doesn't have such a monstrous talent. He's able to take on the Lord of Profundity's quadruple kill of a peak Lord of Creation. Zhuo Wen and 4 kills who were in the midst of a battle noticed the surrounding cultivators. That was especially true of the mermen that Liang brought over. They were particularly eye-catching amongst the surrounding cultivators. Zhuowen frowned. Clearly, he had not thought that the merfolk would actually come. Was it because of Thorpe? Si Sha also saw Liang and the other merfolk. Her eyes shone with a strange, scarlet light. She sneered. "I didn't think that the merfolk would come. Looks like they already know that the gatekeeper has been killed. They've come to investigate. If he knows that the merfolk who killed the gatekeeper is right in front of him, I wonder what the merfolk will do." Si Sha sneered as she looked at Zhuowen mockingly. The young man's strength had exceeded her expectations. She suspected that Si Sha might have already been slain by him. She knew that she would not be able to take him down in a short period of time, but now that the merfolk had come to investigate Thorpe's death, things would be simple. Zhuowen's gaze was rather hostile. He said coldly, "You won't have the chance to say who the real culprit is." With that, Zhuowen's right hand formed a blade. Immediately, a shocking blade light erupted from his right hand. Soon after, a terrifying white light filled the entire starry sky. Everyone's eyes seemed to be left with only the soaring blade light. 4th Kill's pupils shrank. Her eyes were filled with fear. That was because the saber light was too terrifying. It made her feel like she was about to die. Whoosh! The blade light was very fast. It instantly landed in front of Si Sha. Si Sha only had the chance to raise her blood-red short sword. However, the moment her blood-red short sword collided with the blade light, she was horrified to find that her blood-red short sword shattered, and her entire body was shredded by the blade light. Seeing this, many of the surrounding cultivators looked at Zhuowen in awe. Their gazes were filled with dread. Everyone could see Si Sha's identity, but such an expert had still been killed by this young man. Although Zhuowen's aura was only that of the Lord of Mystery, in the eyes of many people, this young man was definitely hiding his cultivation. In reality, he was a very terrifying expert at the level of an old monster. Liang narrowed his eyes and looked at the young man with some dread. The blade light that the young man had released just now was very terrifying. Even he had to use all his strength to block it. It was clear that this young man was not simple. This young man is a rogue cultivator. He forced his way into the dark ancient city and even killed the gatekeepers at the entrance of the dark ancient city. One of them was from your merfolk race. I remember that guy was called Thorpe. Suddenly, not far from Li Yong, a gloomy voice sounded. Soon after, a blood-red piece of flesh grew continuously and finally turned into an old woman with a face full of wrinkles. This old woman was Si Sha, who had been killed by Zhuowen. However, he did not expect Si Sha to still be alive. However, Si Sha's complexion was not very good. She was very pale, and her aura was somewhat weak. It was likely that Zhuowen's attack had caused her quite a bit of damage. Li Yang's gaze turned cold. He looked at Si Sha, who had been reborn, and said coldly, "You said this young man killed Thorpe?" Si Sha's voice was somewhat weak. She took out a crystal ball from her sleeve and tossed it to Li Yang, saying, "You can take a look at this if you don't believe me." Li Yang narrowed his eyes and looked at the crystal ball. There was an image playing in the crystal ball. The image was the scene of Zhuowen killing Thorpe. Crack! The veins on Li Yang's forehead bulged as he looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly gaze. He growled, "Human, how dare you kill Thorpe? Do you know Thorpe's identity?" Zhuowen frowned. He did not care about Li Yang. Instead, he looked at Si Sha, who had been reborn. He did not expect Si Sha to still be alive. Chapter 29:29. Miserable Li Yang. Li Yang was enraged when he saw that the youth in front of him was ignoring him. A ferocious aura suddenly erupted from his body. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows and glanced at Li Yang of the merman race. Zhuowen's divine sense detected that Li Yang's cultivation was only at the late-stage Genesis Lord Realm, which was slightly weaker than the quadruple killer. However, the aura that suddenly erupted was so terrifying that it was much stronger than the quadruple killer's peak. As expected of an alien race, you are indeed much stronger than human cultivators of the same level. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. It wasn't that he hadn't interacted with the alien races of the primitive heaven domain before. He had interacted with Kong Shi of the Phoenix people before. Therefore, he knew that alien races were much stronger than human cultivators of the same level. Of course, this depended on which alien race it was in the primitive heaven domain. After all, the alien races of the primitive heaven domain were also divided into different grades. For example, the top 10 races of the primitive heaven domain had powerful bloodlines. Even an ordinary member of the top 10 races was much stronger than human cultivators. Zhuowen had read books about the races of the primitive heaven domain before and knew that the mermaid race was one of the top 10 races of the primitive heaven domain. However, it was ranked last among the top 10 races. Even so, it was still one of the top 10 races of the primitive heaven domain. Its foundation wasn't any weaker than the Dao palaces of the Xianmi heaven domain. Although Li Yang's cultivation wasn't high, he was very strong. Even the quadruple killer's expression couldn't help but change slightly when she felt Li Yang's aura. However, she was soon overjoyed. Li Yang's strength was beyond her expectations. Even if she fought with Li Yang at her peak, she wouldn't have the confidence to win. She might even be killed. Now that Li Yang was going to attack Zhuowen, she knew that Zhuowen was going to suffer. When the time came, she would assist Li Yang. She knew that Zhuowen would definitely die. "Human, you think you are invincible after defeating the Blood Prison's quadruple killer? How dare you look down on me?" Li Yang's voice was slightly hoarse and filled with anger. When the quadruple killer heard Li Yang say that she was a piece of trash, she was so angry that she almost spat out blood. However, the quadruple killer was more rational and didn't act impulsively. She was now looking forward to Li Yang finishing Zhuowen. "No, it's just that, in my opinion, you're even more trash than quadruple killer. I didn't even need to use that move just now to defeat you," Zhuowen said. He could tell that the mermaid's powerful strength was mainly amplified by her naturally powerful physical strength. If they fought head-on, how could Li Yang be a match for Zhuowen, who had cultivated the Panga's sacred body? Was of the four killer was of the heavens. Was Li Yang, the quadruple killers of the god. Yang's of the heaven great was of the killer, was of the death. Was of the was, of the Killer Yang God. If the quadruple killer fought Zhuowen head-on, she would have been defeated a long time ago. How could she fight with Zhuowen to such an extent? Li Yang was obviously the kind of person who fought head-on. Although the power he showed was indeed stronger than quadruple killer, Zhuowen found this kind of opponent easier to deal with than quadruple killer. In layman's terms, an opponent like Li Yang was completely restrained by Zhuowen's Pangus sacred body. In other words, the alien races in the primitive heavenly realm who relied on their physical strength were also restrained by Zhuowen's Pangus sacred body. After all, in terms of physical strength, Zhuowen was basically invincible among the same level. Zhuo Wen's words immediately made Li Yang burst into an uproar. Li Yang's eyes were wide open and his eyes were red. It was obvious that he was very angry. You are really courting death. After killing Thorpe, you still dare to provoke me. Today, I will make you die a horrible death and then bring your body to Lord Sauron. Li Yang roared angrily. He kicked the void with his right foot, and a terrifying power spread out. He rushed out like an arrow and instantly rushed in front of Zhuowen. Boom! Li Yang clenched the 5 fingers of his right hand into a fist and fiercely punched towards Zhuowen's face. The force of his fist tore through the air and exploded with a deafening sound, as if thunder had struck the earth. Many of the cultivators present could feel the horror of Li Yang's punch. Even quadruple killer's face changed slightly. On the other hand, Li Yang's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. His punch relied on the combination of his cultivation and physical strength. Even a peak god of creation who was quadruple kill might not necessarily be able to take this punch head-on. Although the young man in front of him was strong and might be able to take his punch, he would probably pay a high price. Idiot! Zhuowen sneered. He opened his right hand and grasped Li Yang's fist. All the power of the Pangu's sacred body burst out as he clenched his fist. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking rang out. Li Yang's pupils shrank into needles. The intense pain caused him to involuntarily let out a heart-wrenching scream. What? Li Yang is an elite of the Merfolk tribe, and his physical body is extremely powerful. Even Pinnacle Genesis, lords, are no match for him. This young man actually managed to crush Li Yang's fist in a head-on clash. Just how terrifying is this guy's physical body? There are indeed some human cultivators who cultivate their physical bodies. However, even if these cultivators cultivate their physical bodies to be extremely strong, it is still difficult for them to compare with the physical bodies of foreign experts. It is easy for them to be at a disadvantage in a head-on collision. However, this guy really defies common sense. What is this guy's background? He is so strong and so young. I'm afraid he is also a peerless genius from a Dao Palace force. This kid is extremely unfamiliar. In the ancient city of darkness, I've seen monstrous geniuses like Zhongli Haoyan and Yi Qidong, but I've never seen this kid before. I don't even know what faction he comes from. Everyone discussed animatedly, as if a pot had exploded. Clearly, Zhu Wen's sudden display of this skill shocked them greatly. While everyone was discussing, Zhu Wen's left fist landed on Li Yang's face. Li Yang screamed again as he was hit by Zhu Wen and fell to the ground, creating a huge pit in the ruins. Quadruple Killer's mouth was slightly open as he began to retreat. Only now did she know that the young man in front of her was so terrifying. Fortunately, she did not fight him head-on in the beginning. Otherwise, she would end up even more miserable than Li Yang. Chapter 2930. The Power of the Fated Space-Time Kill Run. Si Sha had grasped the timing very well. The moment Zhuowen knocked Li Yang to the ground with a punch, she used an escape technique and drilled into the void. Like a loach in water, she quickly escaped. Unfortunately, Zhuowen had long been on guard against Si Sha. Now that Si Sha was escaping quickly, Zhuowen sneered. He pointed at the void with his right hand and said indifferently, "Today I'll use you to test my self-created remarkable ability, the fated space-time kill." A mysterious power shot out from Joie, whence fingertip and terrifying invisible ripples appeared in the surroundings. Soon after, an enormous purple river flowed out from the void behind Join. The purple river was very fast, chasing after Sisha, who had escaped into the void. Strangely enough, wherever the purple river passed, it was as if time and space had stopped. Sisha, who was shuttling through the void, felt it especially strongly. She only felt that time and space around her had stopped, and no matter how she escaped, it was like she was running in place. At the same time, she felt that the trajectory of her fate seemed to have been reversed, as if she was destined to be swept up and eroded by the purple river. This feeling of fate made her feel a sense of fear, a fear of the unknown power. No, when the purple river caught up with Sisha and swept her into it, Sisha let out a shrill scream and then lost all signs of life. The onlookers saw Sisha's body float out from the void in the distance. There were no injuries on his body, but Sisha had died just like that. Such an inexplicable death made the onlookers feel a chill in their hearts. They looked at the young man with the scar not far away, and their eyes were filled with awe and fear. But at the same time they were even more puzzled. Who was this guy who had suddenly appeared? He was so powerful that he was definitely not a nobody in the Xianmi heavenly domain. But no matter how they looked at him carefully, they still could not figure out his origin. It was as if he had suddenly appeared. After Sisha and Li Yong died one after another, the 5 merfolk elites brought by Li Yong were filled with fear. They quickly sent a message to Zoro and quickly fled. Li Yong was a late-stage lord of creation powerhouse. He was quite a famous powerhouse in the merfolk race. Meanwhile, the 5 of them were only at the early stage of the god of creation stage, so they were much weaker than Li Yong. Even if the 5 of them joined forces, they would at most be in a stalemate with Li Yong, and might even be at a disadvantage. Now, the scarred young man who had suddenly appeared in front of them had killed Li Yong in an unstoppable manner. The 5 of them knew very well that even if the 5 of them joined forces, they would definitely not be a match for the scarred young man in front of them. If he didn't escape now, when would he? Zhuowen looked at the 5 fleeing mermaids indifferently with a cold smile on his lips. However, he did not give chase. Instead, he slowly took out an ordinary wooden bow. This wooden bow looked very ordinary and even a little shabby. The onlookers did not understand what was going on. They wondered why this person would take out such a useless wooden bow. This wooden bow did not have any divine artifact aura at all. At most, it was just a wooden bow from the mortal domain. Could it be that this person was planning to use this wooden bow to kill the 5 fleeing merfolk? It can't be, right? Isn't this guy too arrogant? He wants to kill 5 early-stage Lords of Creation stage merfolk with a wooden bow? This is simply too pretentious. Haha, this person has indeed gotten a little carried away. I want to see how powerful this shabby bow is. If he can't even kill a single merfolk, that would be too embarrassing. When they realized that Zhuowen had really taken out an arrow and knocked it on the wooden bow, everyone's face was filled with black lines. It seemed like their guess was right. This guy really planned to use this broken bow to chase after the 5 mermaids. The 5 fleeing merfolk were actually a little on edge. When Zhuowen had used the Destiny space-time kill earlier, Quadruple Kill, who had escaped into the void, had died inexplicably. Quadruple Kill was the 4th killer of the Blood Prison's 7 killers. Apart from the first 3 killers, Quadruple Kill could be said to be the strongest killer in the Blood Prison. The Blood Prison's killers were proficient in escape techniques, and Quadruple Kill was even more proficient in this. His escape technique was so fast that they could not even see his shadow. They originally thought that Quadruple Kill would definitely be able to escape. However, they did not expect that Quadruple Kill would die inexplicably after this young man used that strange technique. He did not even have any external injuries. They knew very well that if this young man also used that technique just now, they would definitely follow in the footsteps of Quadruple Kill and Liang. Therefore, they were very smart. The moment they fled, They split into 5 different directions. This way, they would not be caught in one fell swoop. That technique looked very powerful. They guessed that there must be a limit to using it. If they fled separately, their chances of escaping would be much higher. However, they found that the young man behind them did not chase after them. Instead, he took out an ordinary wooden bow and wanted to kill them. This made them heave a sigh of relief. At the same time, they secretly mocked him. This guy was really arrogant. He actually intended to use such an ordinary object to kill them. He was simply ignorant. Zhuo naturally felt the strange look in the eyes of the surrounding people. The corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. He pulled the bowstring to 1/3 of an arc and immediately loosened his fingers. Boom! A thunderous sound resounded. The arrow swept out at an extremely fast speed with monstrous killing intent. It seemed to have transcended the limits of time and space. The moment the arrow swept out, the originally clamorous crowd became extremely silent. This was because they felt the terrifying killing intent on the arrow that swept out violently. That killing intent made them feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. It was too terrifying and difficult to face directly. Ah! A pained cry sounded out in the distance as a fleeing merman was shot by an arrow. Because he could not withstand the terrifying killing intent and power, he was directly torn to pieces by the power of the arrow. His body and soul were destroyed. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. This merfolk was an elite of the merfolk race. Although his strength was not as strong as Liang's, he was still an early-stage god of creation powerhouse. His status in the merfolk race was not low. Moreover, it was not easy to cultivate such a god of creation level merfolk. Now he was directly killed by a wooden bow and an arrow. This was simply too shocking. Of course, among the spectating crowd, there were also discerning cultivators. They could tell that the arrow was not ordinary. It was a god of creation level divine arrow. However, even if it was a god of creation level divine arrow, it could at most injure a god of creation powerhouse. To kill a god of creation with a single arrow, especially one that was of the god of creation level, was simply too inconceivable. Could it be that this divine arrow was strengthened by the wooden bow? That's why it was so powerful. Some people thought to themselves. They looked at the slightly worn-out wooden bow in Zhuowen's hand with a serious expression. Chapter 29:31. Sapua! Ah! 3 miserable cries rang out as another 3 merfolk elites were killed by the divine arrows. All of them were killed by a single arrow. However, just as Zhuowen was about to fire his 5th arrow, the 5th merman elite actually turned around and charged toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows, seeing the determined expression on the merman elite's face. He knew that this merman elite knew that he couldn't escape and wanted to fight with his life on the line. Since this merman elite wasn't going to escape, Zhuowen naturally didn't plan to waste his arrows. Even Li Yang had been defeated by him in a head-on battle. This god of creation, initial stage, elite mermaid, was no different from an ant to Zhuowen. Zhuowen only needed one move to defeat this merman elite. I say, fighting with your life on the line is the biggest mistake you've made. I only need one move to... Zhuowen was just about to say something, but before he could finish, the merman elite kneeled down a few hundred meters away from Zhuowen. Sir, I failed to recognize Mount Tai. I shouldn't have offended you. As long as you spare my life, I'm willing to submit to you. This merman elite was trembling with tears and snot running down his face. He didn't dare to look at Zhuowen. Clearly, he was scared out of his wits by Zhuowen's methods. Zhuowen was a little dazed. This elite merman named Sa Pu was a little too tactful. Zhuowen originally didn't plan to let Sa Pu go. However, after thinking about it, he nodded and said, "Give me your divine sense imprint, and I can consider not killing you." Sa Pu straightforwardly gave up his divine sense imprint without hesitation. Then he thanked Zhuowen profusely for not killing him. Zhuowen was a little speechless. He was only considering not killing him, but this guy was taking it for granted. Putting away Sapu's spiritual soul imprint, Zhuowen did not intend to kill Sapu, but had other ideas. Although he had entered the dark ancient city, he was completely clueless about the path ahead. This Sapu obviously came from the innermost part of the dark ancient city, so he definitely knew where the temporary alliance between the alien race and human cultivators had explored. Moreover, he wasn't particularly clear about which forces were in the alliance this time. Furthermore, he had killed the elites of the merman race and killed an expert like Li Yang. He was afraid that he had offended the merman race. It was naturally inappropriate for him to go there rashly. He had to ask clearly before coming up with a countermeasure. At the same time, Zhuowen realized that after he had killed Li Yang and the 5 merman elites, the points on the Universal Star token had increased by over 9,000 points. Moreover, Li Yang alone provided him with 5,000 points, while the 4 merfolk elites each provided him with 1,000 points. In addition, he had already accumulated close to 1,000 points, which meant that he now had more than 10,000 points on the Universal Peak token. If Zhuowen was still in the Universal Star Tower, he would have seen his name appear on the Universal Contribution list. With more than 10,000 points, his ranking had already reached the 70th position. Because his ranking was relatively low and most of the cultivators in the Universal Star Tower were not around, Zhuowen's sudden appearance on the Universal Contribution list did not cause much of a stir. In fact, no one even noticed. However, Zhuowen was very distressed. His goal was to obtain 1,000,000 points to exchange for the transcending heaven-grade elixirs in the Universal Star Tower. Now he had only accumulated 10,000 points, which was too far away from 1,000,000 points. Zhuowen also knew that he could not rush it. 1,000,000 points were not easy to accumulate. If others were to know of Zhuowen's distress, they would definitely be angered to the point of vomiting blood. Many cultivators had risked their lives in the Star Wars battlefield for hundreds or thousands of years, but they were still unable to enter the Universal Contribution list. However, this guy had only been in the Star Wars battlefield for a few days, yet he had already accumulated more than 10,000 points and even entered the Universal Contribution list. This speed was much faster than Zhongli Haoyan, who was ranked first on the Universal Contribution list. But this guy actually thought it was too slow. After all, there were relatively few cultivators who could surpass their level. Most cultivators' combat power was at an ordinary level. It was already very difficult for them to defeat foreign beings of the same level. There was even a high chance that they would be killed instead, let alone surpassing their level. Killing foreign beings of the same level and lower level gave cultivators very few points. It was only a dozen or even a few points. If one wanted to enter the Universal Contribution list, they either had to be terrifying geniuses like Zhongli Haoyan and Yi Qidong, who could surpass their level and kill enemies, or they had to be old foxes on the battlefield who had spent a long time accumulating a few or a dozen points. Most ordinary cultivators were cannon fodder. For people like Zhuowen, his original body's cultivation level was only that of the Lord of Mystery, but his clone cultivated the Pangu sacred body. His true strength was very terrifying. The Universal Star token clearly did not distinguish the Pangu sacred body that the clone cultivated and gave all the credit to the original body. Therefore, Zhuowen had actually used the identity of the Lord of Mystery to surpass 2 major levels to kill the Lord of Creation. The points obtained from killing foreign beings 2 major levels above him were naturally very terrifying. Come with me. Zhuowen picked up Sapu and disappeared on the spot. The surrounding cultivators all looked at the departing Zhuowen with fear, but no one dared to follow him. This was a ruthless person who could kill a late-stage Lord of Creation. He was too powerful. If they followed him and angered him, their lives would be in danger. However, there were indeed people who were not afraid of death. In the crowd, 3 figures quietly followed. They were very careful and very cautious. After leaving the crowd, Zhuowen came to the ruins of a palace that seemed to be intact. In the ancient city of darkness, ruins like this could be found everywhere. However, The ruins that Zhuowen had chosen were slightly more complete. Zhuowen casually threw Sa Pu to the side and said indifferently, "I saw you guys send a message just now. Was it to that Sauron you guys were talking about?" Sa Pu nodded and bowed. He lowered his head and said, "Yes, sir." "Tell me about this Sauron," Zhuowen said casually. "Sir Sauron is a genius of our merfolk race. He cultivated for less than 3,000 years and is already a peak lord of creation. His battle prowess is very strong, and his status in the race is comparable to that of ordinary elders. Sauron has a younger brother called Sa Pu. It's said that you killed him." At this point, Sa Pu seemed to be even more careful. He secretly glanced at Zhuowen, afraid that he would anger him. "I see. So Sa Pu has a genius brother." Zhuowen nodded, but he was a little surprised. Sa Pu's cultivation level was very low. He was only a lord of destiny. He had thought that he was just a small fry. The merfolk race would not go so far as to investigate him for a small fry. Chapter 2932. Blood Prison in a hidden void dimension in the host region. A huge blood-red palace floated. This blood-red palace drifted with the waves in the vast void dimension, drifting erratically like a ferry in the sea. This blood-red palace hidden in the mysterious void dimension was the lair of the Blood Prison. The Blood Prison's lair was a mystery to many cultivators in the host region, and almost no one could find its location. No one expected it to be hidden in the void dimension. After all, the void dimension was too big and dark. There was nothing inside, only nothingness. Cultivators who entered the void dimension could easily get lost, let alone find the Blood Prison's lair. The largest palace in the Blood Prison was filled with blood-red light, accompanied by a nauseating smell of blood. It gave off a very strange atmosphere. The palace was very large, but there were very few things inside. Apart from the thick blood pillars standing inside, the palace was exceptionally spacious. There were 7 seats in the palace at the very front. Each seat was forged from an unknown skeleton, and its surface was dripping with blood. It was very strange. At this moment, among the 7 seats, the 3 seats in the middle were burning with blood flames. A pair of strange eyes appeared in each of the 3 balls of blood flames. Old 5, Old 6, and Old 7 failed their mission. Old 5 and Old 6's life aura has disappeared. "I'm afraid they're dead," the leftmost blood flame said in a hoarse voice. "Since Old 7 didn't die, why didn't he return? What's going on?" The rightmost blood flame asked in confusion. "Old 7 is the weakest, but he didn't die and didn't return to the Blood Prison immediately. I'm afraid he was captured alive." The rightmost blood flame spoke, his voice carrying a dignified aura. The rightmost blood flame was the true master of the Blood Prison. He was one of the Blood Prison's 7 killers and had a fierce reputation in the Eastern Way region, causing many cultivators to tremble in fear. Big Brother is right. Old 7 didn't die and didn't return. He must have been captured alive. It seems that the target this time is quite smart, but he thinks he's smart. The rightmost second killer sneered. "Humph. The Blood Prison assassins have sworn to the heavenly Tao that they will never allow any thoughts of betrayal. Although 7th Brother is more greedy for life and afraid of death, he does not dare to violate the heavenly Tao oath. After all, 7th Brother went against his oath to the heavenly Tao. His fate is even more terrifying than death." 3 kills said nonchalantly. Suddenly, when 3 kills and 2 kills were discussing the matter of 7 kills, the blood flame that represented 1 kill suddenly surged and became very violent in an instant. "Big Brother, what's wrong?" 2nd kill and 3rd kill looked at 1st kill in confusion. Bloody flames flickered. After a long time, Isha's figure came and said, "4th sister's life force has also disappeared." Hearing this, the pupils of 2nd kill and 3rd kill shrank, and they exclaimed at the same time, "Impossible!" The quadruple killer was very powerful. far more powerful than the quintuple killer. He was also an assassin that the three of them had focused on nurturing. With Quadrakill's talent in slaughter, it would be more than enough for him to surpass the three of them in the future. The three of them had placed a lot of hope on Quadrakill. But now, fourth kill had also fallen. For them and the blood prison, this was undoubtedly a great loss. Big brother, I remember that fourth sister was planning to go to the dark ancient city in the star battlefield to investigate the situation of ancestral Shaman Gonggong, but she was actually killed. Do you know who killed her? 3 kills said with an ugly expression. Before fourth sister died, she sent me an image. The person who killed her is this person. As 1 kill spoke, he projected an image into the sky. The image in the image was the disguised Zhuowen. There are traces of disguise on this person's face. This is not his original face, second kill said, hitting the nail on the head. Yes, I also saw this guy's battle. His target is basically the same as quintuple killers. He should be Zhuowen in disguise. 1 kill said, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Oh, it's this guy again. He's really going too far. I remember that this guy killed a lot of people in our blood prison. I didn't care about him at first, but now he has become so strong that even Quadrakill was killed by him. Second kill said in surprise. Big brother, second brother, let me do it this time. Our blood prison can't just fight back. Otherwise, the prestige of our blood prison will be gone. 3 kills suddenly said. With third brother strength, it's no problem to deal with Zhuowen. But I always feel that this boy has some kind of powerful trump card. Third brother, you'd better be careful, second kill reminded. 3 kills nodded, indicating that he understood. At the same time, he cupped his hands and said, Big brother, I still need some people to assist me. I'm going to set up the blood-splashing, limitless array. This time it's either success or failure. When 1 kill and second kill heard that 3 kills was going to set up the blood-splashing, limitless array, their faces changed slightly. The blood-splashing, limitless array was a terrifying, killing array of the blood prison. It had been passed down in the blood prison for countless years, but because the cost was too high, it had been listed as a forbidden technique in the blood prison. The blood-splashing, limitless array needed 1 person to preside over the array and 108 people to support the array, which were arranged in 108 positions of the array. At the same time, the energy source of the blood-splashing, limitless array was provided by the blood essence of the 108 cultivators. In other words, the blood-splashing, limitless array was operated by absorbing the blood essence of the 108 cultivators. In the past, there had been a sect master of the blood prison who, in order to kill an early stage, transcending Heaven Lord, had sent over a blood-splashing, limitless array master. 108 early stage Lord of Creation assassins were called over, and they set up the sanguine, limitless formation. In the end, the early stage Lord of Creation was killed within the sanguine, limitless formation. The final price was that the 108 early Lord of Creation assassins had all perished, and the blood prison sect master had lost too much essence blood. His cultivation had plummeted, and he had barely managed to stay alive. However, he was basically a cripple. It could be said that the blood-splashing, limitless array was a great array that harmed others without benefiting oneself. This was also why it was listed as a forbidden technique in the blood prison. Now that 3 kills was preparing to use the blood-splashing, limitless array again, it seemed that he had made up his mind to kill Zhuowen. Third brother, the side effects of the blood-splashing, limitless array are too great, and it will consume a lot of your energy. This method is not suitable. 1 kill said hesitantly. 3 kills laughed cruelly and said, Big brother, second brother, you worry too much. The side effects of the blood-splashing, limitless array are indeed great. I naturally won't take the risk easily, but I have a more suitable candidate. Who? 1 kill asked. Chapter 2933. Traceless blood. So it's that guy. Ever since Traceless blood returned from the 8 heavens, His talent seems to be even more terrifying than before. His cultivation base is constantly breaking through. I remember that he had just officially stepped into the third step of the Tao validation stage, and his cultivation base has reached the early stage of the creator stage. Second Kills nodded. He had some impression of traceless blood. When traceless blood had gone to the 8 heavens, although his talent was not bad, it was not enough to attract their attention. However, ever since traceless blood's return, his talent seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, and his cultivation speed was unbelievably fast. In just a short 100 years, traceless blood had advanced from the peak of the destiny stage to the early stage of the creator stage. This cultivation speed was simply cheating. Yes, letting traceless blood take charge of the blood splash limitless formation is the best choice. When the time comes, third brother can help from the side. That Juoan will die even if he doesn't go to heaven or hell. Second Kills said with a laugh. Yes, let's do that. After all, third brother is one of the blood prison's 3 killers. His status is not ordinary, and he doesn't need to put himself in danger. Traceless blood is the most suitable candidate. All right, third brother, second brother, and I will continue our seclusion. We'll wait for you to bring back good news. After Second Kills finished speaking, the crimson flame on the seat in the middle gradually extinguished, and so did Second Kill's crimson flame. The bloody flames of Triple Kill surged violently, as if they were about to set a prairie ablaze. Finally, a figure slowly walked out of the terrifying bloody flames. It was a middle-aged man with a square face. He was very burly, and even his loose crimson clothes could not hide the strong lines of his muscles. This man was the true face of the blood prison's third killer. Triple Kill flicked his finger and sent out a red message. Then he casually sat down in his seat, as if he was waiting for someone. Not long after, a crimson figure flew in from outside the palace. Immediately after, a man knelt on one knee in front of him. The man kneeling on one knee did not look very old. His face was chiseled, and he was quite good-looking. Master, 3 Kills, may I know why you've called me here? Xue Wuhen asked in a low voice, his voice full of respect. Wuhen, I have a very important task for you. If you can complete this task well, I will promote you into the ranks of the blood prison's 7 killers. 3 Killers said lightly. Traceless Blood's pupils shrank when he heard that. He raised his head abruptly and looked at 3 Kills. His eyes were filled with excitement, and his chest heaved up and down violently. Traceless Blood suppressed the excitement in his heart and said in a low voice, Lord 3 Kills, please tell me what to do. As long as I can do it, I will not disappoint you. 3 Kills nodded and said, the mission I want to give you is very simple. I need you to cooperate with me to kill someone. Traceless Blood's eyes flashed with shock. He hadn't thought that Blood Prison's third killer would be preparing to kill someone. Moreover, he would need his cooperation. Didn't this mean that the target of this assassination was not simple? Traceless Blood gritted his teeth and said, Lord 3 Kills, how should I cooperate? Please tell me. 3 Kills nodded secretly and said, I'm going to activate the blood-splashing limitless array. You will be the host of the blood-splashing limitless array. Don't worry, I will send 108 elite killers to cooperate with you. Traceless Blood fell silent. His eyes flickered, revealing a look of hesitation. The blood-splashing limitless array was famous in the blood prison and the host region. It was a killing array that had once killed a master at the early stage of Sky-Reaching Realm. However, Traceless Blood was more aware of the horror of the blood-splashing limitless array. Its side effects were very severe. Whether it was the 108 elite killers who assisted or him who presided over the array, they all needed to contribute a corresponding amount of blood essence to the operation of the array. Blood essence was the life essence of a practitioner. If too much of it was lost, it could easily be life-threatening. Noticing the hesitation in Traceless Blood's eyes, 3 kills said lightly, "If you feel embarrassed, you can refuse. I will find someone else." Traceless Blood clenched his teeth and said, "Sir, 3 kills, I agree." This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As long as he did well this time, he could enter the ranks of the Blood Prison's 7 kills and enjoy the highest status and treatment in the Blood Prison. Traceless Blood really didn't want to give up this opportunity. After all, if he missed this opportunity, he didn't know how many people he would have to kill before he could finally enter the ranks of the Blood Prison's 7 kills and be on equal footing. Good. Traceless Blood, I really didn't misjudge you. Not only is your talent superb, but even your temperament is excellent. Your future is limitless. Seeing Traceless Blood agree, 3 kills nodded with satisfaction. Let's go. Come with me to prepare the materials for the blood-splashing, limitless array and select the 108 elite killers. With a wave of his sleeve, 3 kills left the palace with Traceless Blood in a remote corner of the dark ancient city. Zhuowen was still asking Sa Pu about the situation of the merfolk race. How many people have come from the merfolk race this time? Is Sauron the strongest? Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he began to ask the merfolk elite, Sa Pu, about the merfolk race. Sa Pu clearly knew his situation. He had no right to refute Zhuowen. As long as it was Zhuowen who asked, he basically answered. After some questioning, Zhuowen roughly understood the situation of the merfolk race that had come to the dark ancient city this time. The merfolk race was one of the 10 great races of the primitive heaven realm. They had a strong foundation and weren't the slightest bit inferior to the 10 extremes Corp sect of the host region. This time the merfolk race didn't send many merfolk, only a dozen or so. The main person in charge was an early-stage creator realm elder. This elder was called MDA. Among the many elders of the merfolk race, he was one of the elders with a high status and was very powerful. In the sect, Sauron's status was actually about the same as MDA's. Thus, although MDA was the person in charge this time, he would always ask for Sauron's opinion before making a decision. In reality, the person in charge should be MDA and Sauron. This time, the merfolk race had also sent their elites. Whether it was Liang or the 5 merfolk that Liang had brought, their cultivation was basically at the creator realm or above. In the Xianmi heavenly domain, this kind of cultivation was an expert who stood at the peak and was revered by tens of thousands of people. However, the merfolk race had sent over a dozen elite experts of this level all at once. It was clear that they attached great importance to the dark ancient city this time. Of course, if Sauron and MDA found out that Liang and the 5 merfolk elites that they had sent out had basically been killed by Zhuowen, only Sa Pu was left, and he had even become Zhuowen's servant. The 2 of them would probably vomit blood. After learning that the strongest person in the team sent by the merfolk race this time was only at the early stage creator realm, Zhuowen heaved a sigh of relief. Although the strength of a foreign race was much stronger than that of a human cultivator of the same level, Zhuowen guessed that MDA's strength was at most equivalent to a mid-stage creator realm human cultivator. If Zhuowen used his peak 5-star Pango sacred body to fight against an expert of MDA's level, it would naturally be strenuous and unrewarding. However, he had many trump cards. The power of the Ho-E Divine Arrow combined with the Ho-E Divine Bow had even injured a half-step creator realm expert like Gao Yonghong of the 10 Extremes Corp sect. Chapter 2934. Sauron, that's right, Master. We sent a message to Master Sauron just now. I think Master Sauron will be here soon, Sa Pu said in a trembling voice. Where did you tell Sauron? Zhuowen asked. It's the place where you fought Master Liang. Sa Pu said carefully. And, Sa Pu, send another message to Sauron. Tell him that Liang and his 4 lackeys are all dead and that the murderer is here. Zhuowen instructed calmly. Sa Pu was dumbfounded upon hearing this. What kind of person would tell the person who was seeking revenge his location after killing someone? Wasn't that asking for death? Sa-pu knew that this human cultivator was extraordinarily powerful and could easily defeat a late-stage god of creation like Liang. However, Sauron was different. Perhaps Sauron's cultivation level was only a minor level higher than Liang's, but he was far more powerful than Liang. Even the leader of the Merfolk tribe, MDA, was not confident of defeating Sauron in a short period of time. As for Liang, compared to Sauron, he was even weaker. Sauron could defeat Liang in a few moves. Sa-pu knew how terrifying Sauron was and did not think highly of this human cultivator. However, this human cultivator was simply overestimating himself. He actually planned to lure Sauron out. "Master, what you're doing isn't right." Before Sa-pu could finish speaking, he was frightened into silence by Zhuowen's cold glare. "Send the message." Zhuowen's tone was cold as he spoke to Sa-pu in a commanding tone. Sa-pu was helpless. He knew that Zhuowen had already made up his mind, so he could only send another message to Sauron, telling him where Zhuowen was. At this moment, there were still some cultivators who had not left the place where Zhuowen, Liang, and four slayers had fought. Instead, they were gossiping about the battle between Zhuowen for slayers and Liang. "I wonder who that fellow cultivator was. He really gave us human cultivator's face. He beat the shit out of the Merfolk tribe, especially that Merfolk at the end. The way he begged for mercy was too funny. How shameful." Among this group of people, there were 3 people who were discussing the most intensely. Looking at their impassioned appearances, Zhuowen's display of invincibility against the group of mermen earlier had greatly vented their anger. Rumble. Suddenly, a gigantic palm descended from the sky like a mountain and landed on the heads of the 3 cultivators who were having the most heated discussion. The 3 cultivators didn't even have the chance to make a sound before they were smashed into smithereens by the palm. They couldn't be more dead. An invisible shockwave spread in all directions, causing the surrounding cultivators to shudder. Their eyes were filled with dread and awe. An unusually tall merman dashed over. At this moment, he slowly withdrew his right hand. Clearly, that palm strike, just now, was the merman's masterpiece. "It's Sauron of the Merfolk race. I didn't expect him to come so quickly." His younger brother and his capable subordinates were killed for no reason. "This Sauron is probably mad. It's best if we don't provoke him." The surrounding people discussed animatedly and couldn't help but distance themselves from the merman who had suddenly appeared. Sauron's aura was extremely strong, and his body was several times taller than Liang and the 5 merman elites. The scales on his body were also pitch black. Sauron landed in the arena, and the surrounding people subconsciously retreated once again, not daring to raise their heads and look at Sauron. "Where's that damned human? Where did he go?" Sauron suppressed the anger in his chest, looked around at the crowd, and asked coldly, "We don't know where that cultivator went either. He was too fast. We couldn't catch up to him at all." "Right, it's useless to ask us. That cultivator is too powerful. His speed is beyond our reach." Several cultivators in the surroundings retorted in low voices. However, as soon as they finished speaking, Sauron grabbed them with one hand. Soon after, he exerted force in his palm, and those cultivators were instantly killed by Sauron. For a moment, no one dared to refute Sauron. At this moment, Sauron was like a tyrant looking down at the surrounding people from above. The surrounding people were like subjects that had submitted to him, not daring to make a sound. Just as Sauron was about to kill all the cultivators here to vent his anger, his communication jade talisman suddenly lit up. After looking at the message on the communication jade talisman, he narrowed his eyes and was filled with killing intent. "What an arrogant fellow! How dare he provoke me? He's courting death." Sauron no longer cared about the surrounding cultivators. Instead, he took a step forward and disappeared on the spot, causing the surrounding cultivators to be puzzled. In the southeastern corner of the dark, ancient city, in the illusory ruins, Zhuowen and the merman stood quietly. Sa-pu stood behind Zhuowen, his legs somewhat weak. This was because not only did Zhuowen ask him to send their current location to Sauron, but he also sent a lot of provocative words to Sauron. Sa-Pu knew that if Sauron received his message, he would definitely go crazy with anger. At that time, not only would Sauron not let this human cultivator in front of him off, he would also not let him off. Thinking of how terrifying Sauron was, Sa-Pu was already trembling in fear, not knowing what to do. On the other hand, Zhuowen put his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. In the depths of his eyes, there was a burning desire to fight. This time, Zhuowen only sent out his clone, while his original body hid in another ruin. His peak, 5-star Pengu sacred body was very powerful, but he had not been able to find an evenly matched opponent to test how powerful it was. He learned from Sa-Pu that Sauron was a famous genius of the Merman clan. His combat strength was very terrifying, and he could even fight against the powerful elders of the clan. He knew that he had found an opponent. He wanted to see if his peak 5-star Pengu sacred body was a match for Sauron. Of course, even if he was not a match for Sauron, he still had his original body. Zhuowen had left the Ho-E divine arrow and the Ho-E divine bow with his original body for safekeeping. If he was not a match for Sauron, his original body would shoot the Ho-E divine arrow and guarantee that Sauron would be killed. Whoosh! A stream of light quickly swept over and finally stopped in front of the ruins where Zhuowen was. Zhuowen looked at the unusually tall merman that stopped in front of him and could not help but narrow his eyes. The merman in front of him should only be at the peak of the Lord of Creation, but the aura emanating from his body made Zhuowen very wary. He was much, much stronger than the Liang that he had killed before. Master, Lord Sauron has a special bloodline, and his strength is many times stronger than ordinary mermen. You'd better be careful. He is much more terrifying than Lord Liang. You must not be careless. Sa-Pu carefully reminded behind him. His life was now tied to Zhuowen's. Chapter 29:35. To share the limelight, Zhuowen nodded, but the battle intent in his eyes grew even stronger and shot straight into the sky. Sauron stopped not far from the ruins, and his cold gaze fell on the human cultivator in front of him. Of course, he also saw Sa-Pu behind Zhuowen. Sa-Pu, you've done well to provide me with the location of this human cultivator. Seeing that you've done well, I've decided to overlook the disrespect you spoke to me through the communication jade talisman. Sauron's voice was very cold. Sa-Pu trembled and did not dare to speak. You must be Sauron of the merfolk race. Zhuowen casually continued, you might have misunderstood. The reason why Sa-Pu exposed my location to you was not because he was loyal to you, but because of my orders. Your orders? Sauron's face turned ugly as he stared coldly at Zhuowen. Soon after, he burst into laughter and said, what a joke! If it was really your order, then your head must have been kicked by a donkey. You're actually courting death. Whether I am courting death or not, you and I will know after a battle. I heard that you have a special bloodline and have a special status in the merfolk race. You are a genius that is focused on nurturing. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. He put his palms together, and his body emitted a sparkling light like a spotless glass. Today, I want to see if a genius of the merfolk race like you or me has a stronger body. Boom! The instant Zhuowen said the word big, the sparkling and translucent light on his body had already reached its peak, and Zhuowen shot out like a cannonball, disappearing from where he stood, exploding with a terrifying, thunderous sound. Arrogant and conceited human, competing with my merfolk race in terms of physical strength. You simply don't know how to write the word death. Sauron sneered again and again, and the pitch-black scales all over his body stood up. He stomped his right foot, and a large area of the starry sky under his feet collapsed, and he also disappeared on the spot. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, the two of them were like two phantoms, and they exchanged more than 10 blows in the air. Each collision was like a comet hitting Earth, like a star exploding. The aftermath of the battle spread out. and cultivators below the third step of Tao validation did not dare to face it directly. Pucci, Sa-Pu, who was watching from the ruins, was caught off guard. He was hit by the shock wave, and many cracks appeared on his body. His internal organs seemed to have been torn apart, and he was seriously injured. If Sa-Pu hadn't reacted in time and immediately retreated far away, he would have died in the aftermath of the two people's battle. To think that the battle between Master and Sauron would be so terrifying. It's probably already at the level of the Master of Creation. Sa-Pu's eyes were wide open. His heart trembled with fear and disbelief. Bang, bang, bang. Continuous explosions rang out in the void. Immediately, the two phantoms that were originally fighting fiercely separated upon contact. They both retreated tens of thousands of meters away and faced each other from a distance. Sauron looked at Juoin, who was glowing brightly. His eyes narrowed and his heart trembled. The bodies of non-humankind beings were much stronger than those of human beings, and they had a natural advantage. Their merfolk race was one of the top 10 races in the great desolate heaven domain. Although they were ranked last, they were still a top race in the great desolate heaven domain. Their innate advantages were greater than ordinary foreign races. Sauron also had a special bloodline. Even in the entire merfolk race, he was a first-rate genius. Although Sauron hadn't truly unleashed the power of his special bloodline, Sauron's body was still much stronger than that of ordinary merfolk. However, this human cultivator in front of him, who didn't have any innate advantages at all, was actually able to fight him head-on with his body and not be at a disadvantage. This was really unbelievable. Sauron had never believed that a human cultivator's body could be stronger than a foreign race's. However, he had to believe it now. This human cultivator in front of him was simply a freak. How did this guy cultivate his body? Juoin was also moved. He originally thought that Sauron's cultivation level was only a small realm higher than Liang's, and his strength wouldn't be much stronger. With his peak 5-star Pengu's sacred body, he would be able to crush Sauron. However, the battle just now had completely exhausted his hopes of being lucky. Sauron was much stronger than Liang. They were simply not on the same level. Human, I underestimated you. Sauron's gaze became serious. He knew that this human in front of him couldn't be underestimated. He actually had such a powerful combat strength. No wonder this person dared to make such a bold statement. He still had a few real moves. You're not bad either, Juoin said, but his eyes were full of fear. He could feel that Sauron hadn't used his full strength in the battle just now. Of course, Juoin hadn't used his full strength either. After all, he had purely fought with Sauron with his body. He hadn't even used the Tao slaughtering tyrannical technique. If he had used the Tao slaughtering tyrannical technique, his combat strength would have increased by at least 1/3. Humph! Do you think you can open a dye house just because I gave you some power? The ignorant are fearless. Now, I'll let you see the true power of my bloodline. Sauron snorted coldly, and there was a trace of anger in the depths of his eyes. What he was most proud of was his physical strength, especially the special bloodline hidden in his body. With this special bloodline, he could look down on all his peers in the Merman tribe. Even in the Sorcerer tribe, the most powerful tribe in the primitive heaven realm, he who had a special bloodline had place. Now he was being looked down upon by the human he looked down on the most. To him, this was a humiliation. He had to kill this human cultivator to wash away this humiliation. Otherwise, this would become his inner demon in the future. The pitch-black scales on Sauron's body began to turn blood-red, and the aura on his body suddenly increased by dozens of times. There was a trace of murderous sharpness in the fierce aura. As the scales turned red, ferocious blood-red spikes grew out of Sauron's joints, emitting a chilling aura. Human, I only need to activate 1/3 of my bloodline to deal with you. It's enough to kill you. Sauron's low voice drifted in the surroundings, and Sauron himself had already disappeared. Only the terrifying, thunder-like explosion could be heard around him. Zhuowen turned around abruptly, and his right hand formed a fist that emitted a sparkling light as he struck out. Boom! A blood-red fist swept out from behind Zhuowen, and the fist force that Zhuowen had thrown out just happened to collide with the blood-red fist. Instantly, the surrounding air waves swept out. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and couldn't help but retreat. He was a little surprised in his heart. Zoro's punch was several times stronger than before, and he was actually at a disadvantage after taking the blow head-on. Bang! 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 The moment Zhuowen retreated, Sauron's attacks instantly became fierce. It was obvious that he wanted to take the initiative. Zhuowen's gaze was sharp, but he was not in a hurry. His hands were like lightning as he executed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique. Chapter 2936. Activating the bloodline. Sauron was frustrated. This human cultivator hadn't even used his full strength in the head-on clash just now. Roar! Sauron roared again and again. The scales on his body became even redder. The blood-red spikes on his body transformed and grew in a large area. His aura skyrocketed again. This time, I've activated 2/3 of my bloodline. Let's see if you're still a match for me. Sauron roared in his heart. His attacks became even more ferocious, like a violent storm. Zhuowen frowned slightly and felt the pressure. Sauron, who had activated 2/3 of his bloodline, was much stronger than before. This shocked him. Zhuowen had no choice but to use the profound meaning Skyblade. Zhuowen formed a seal with both hands. Suddenly, a blazing white light appeared in his palms and finally manifested into 2 blazing light blades. As Zhuowen's Pengu's sacred body became more and more perfect, his mastery of the profound meaning in the Penga banner also became more and more profound. Naturally, the power of the profound meaning also increased. In the past, he could only use his hand to form the Skyblade. Now he could directly manifest 2 light blades. The power was much stronger than before. Zhuowen's hands danced. The 2 sky blade flashed with a dazzling white light in the void. It blocked all of Sauron's fierce attacks and even suppressed him. Sauron couldn't believe it. What was wrong with this human cultivator? He actually had such a powerful technique. Sauron was furious. He felt that he had activated 2/3 of his bloodline and still couldn't take down a human who was only at the cultivation level of the profound meaning master. This made him feel very embarrassed. He no longer held back and activated all the bloodline in his body. His body grew taller by more than 30 meters, and blood-red scales covered his entire body. A huge blood blade that was even taller than Sauron grew out of his back. This blood blade was very primitive. It didn't even have a handle. It looked very strange. Rip! Sauron tore off the blood blade that grew out of his back. Blood splattered, but Sauron didn't seem to be in any pain. His red eyes were fixed on Zhuowen. Zhuowen frowned. Zoro's aura was much stronger than when he had activated 2/3 of his power. It was as if he was facing an invincible beast. Human, it's been a long time since I, Sauron, fully unleashed my bloodline in battle. You're good. You've successfully unleashed my bloodline. Prepare to die. Zoro said coldly and disappeared without a trace. So fast! Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He felt that Zoro's speed was much faster than before. He couldn't even catch Zoro's shadow. Bang! Zhuowen only felt a gust of wind on his right cheek. He only had time to place the sky-splitting blade in his right hand across his right cheek. Immediately after, he heard the sound of metal clashing. Soon after, he let out a muffled groan and flew backwards. The sky-splitting blade in his right hand shattered into countless white stars. This blood saber is too terrifying. It actually shattered my sky-splitting blade upon contact. While Zhuowen was flying backwards, this was the only thought in his mind. Zoro, who had fully activated his bloodline, was like a cheat. Whether it was strength, speed, or reaction, there was a world of difference compared to when 2/3 of his bloodline was activated. It was as if at this moment, Zoro's whole person had transformed. It was too terrifying. Bang! Another gust of wind swept over, directly blasting towards Zhuo Wen's face. Zhuo Wen had no choice but to place the sky-splitting blade in his left hand in front of him. Immediately, a sharp pain came from his left hand. He was constantly flying backwards by a huge force, and the sky-splitting blade in his left hand shattered into pieces. Ha ha ha! Now you can't show off in front of me. Die! Zoro saw that the sky-splitting blade in Zhuo Wen's hands had been shattered by his blood saber, and he sighed softly in his heart. Zhuo Wen had shown his strength time and time again, and fought to a draw with him. This was already unbelievable to him. Now that he had fully activated his bloodline, if he still couldn't crush this boy, he could eat *T. After all, on the surface, Zhuo Wen's cultivation was only that of the Lord of Xuanji. There was a big gap between their realms, and he was also a human cultivator. Fighting with him to this extent already made him feel extremely insulted. Now was the time for him to wash away his shame. Whoosh! Zoro held the back of the blood saber with both hands and fiercely slammed it toward Zhuo Wen, who was still falling below. His whole body was falling rapidly, and with the help of his falling body, the power of the blood saber became even more terrifying and fierce. Zhuo Wen's expression was not very good. Looking at the blood saber that was falling forward, he could feel that the power of this blood saber was even more terrifying than before. Zhuo Wen put his palms together and quickly formed a complicated seal. Shortly after, his body emitted a sparkling and translucent light. This light was different from the light emitted when he released the Pengu's sacred body. It was more similar to the light reflected from the surface of unpolished jade. It was very pure. This time, Zhuo Wen was using the mysterious light of creation from the Penga banner. The mysterious light of creation was a defensive profundity among the 5 great profundities. Its defensive power was shocking. Boom! The blood saber fell in front of Zhuo Wen and was blocked by the mysterious light of creation. However, the power of the blood saber was indeed terrifying. The mysterious light of creation barely blocked it. Very complicated ripples appeared on the surface of the light, as if it would collapse at any time. Zoro's eyes were filled with shock. He found it unbelievable. He had used all his strength in this attack. Even an expert at the early stage of the Lord of Creation couldn't block it and would die under this saber. Even an expert at the middle stage of the Lord of Creation would probably be injured by this saber. However, the human cultivator in front of him, who had been suppressed by him just now, had actually blocked it. How did this guy do it? However, Zoro soon noticed the mysterious light of creation in front of Zhuo Wen. He knew that this kid was able to block his saber because of the strange light energy covering the surface of this kid's body. Damn it! Let's see how many sabers you can block. Zoro's eyes were cold. His hands danced violently, bringing with them terrifying and ear-piercing wind. Instantly, his blood saber blasted out continuously at an extremely fast speed, turning into streaks of blood shadows that were difficult to capture. Bang! 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 In an instant, the ripples on the surface of the mysterious light of creation became even denser. It was on the verge of collapse, as if it would shatter at any time. Zhuo Wen kept retreating, his eyes becoming very serious. He formed a seal with both hands, and a destructive power condensed between his hands. He had used another profundity, the universal annihilation. The universal annihilation was the same as the sky-opening saber. Among the 5 great profundities of the Penga banner, they were mainly offensive. However, the universal annihilation's attack contained destructive power, and its power was much more terrifying than the sky-opening saber. Chapter 2937. Reversal * crack. * the mysterious light of creation was finally destroyed by Sauron. Sauron's eyes were bloodshot as he slashed his blood saber towards Zhuo Wen's face. It was as if he could see Zhuowen being completely blasted into a bloody mist under his blade. This made him want to laugh wildly in his heart. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk Zhuowen's eyes were calm. After using heaven and earth perish, he performed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique with both hands and punched the bloodsaber's edge. A terrifying explosion resounded, and soon after, a destructive force spread out. Sauron's eyes became dull. He realized that his huge bloodsaber's edge had actually deviated and slashed down from Zhuowen's side, hitting nothing but air. Only then did he realize that this human cultivator had actually blocked his bloodsaber with both hands and deflected it. How did this guy do it? Sauron was stunned. The power of his bloodsaber was very terrifying. Just now, Zhuowen was forced to retreat by his bloodsaber, but now he actually blocked the bloodsaber and deflected it. This was really inconceivable. The moment Zhuowen deflected the bloodsaber, he kept retreating. His cheeks were red, and it was obvious that he had suffered serious internal injuries. Although heaven and earth perish was very destructive, the power of Sauron's bloodsaber was too terrifying. Even the destructive force of heaven and earth perish was slightly inferior to that of the bloodsaber. Asterisk bang. Asterisk bang. Asterisk Sauron seemed to have gone crazy as he violently swung the bloodsaber in his hand, which turned into terrifying blood shadows and bombarded Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen's expression was not good. He could only passively endure Sauron's crazy attacks. The bloodsaber's attacks were too terrifying, and every time he blocked, his arms would become numb. Asterisk bang. Asterisk a terrifying blood light exploded, and a figure flew out in a very sorry state. Not far away, Sapu, who had been watching from the ruins, looked carefully. After seeing the figure that flew out, he was so scared that his whole body trembled. The reason for that was because the figure that was sent flying was none other than Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen was in a very bad state. Both of his arms were covered in dense cracks, as if they would collapse at any moment. Even his body was covered in dense cracks. Zhuowen's face was gloomy. It seemed that he had really underestimated Zorro. After fully activating his bloodline, Sauron's strength was most likely comparable to an early creation lord's. Using his clone's physical body to resist him was truly a bit of a stretch. Human cultivator die. Zorro roared, swung his arms violently, and threw the huge blood blade in his hands directly at Zhuowen. In the distance, Sapu, after seeing the terrifying blood blade, his face immediately turned pale with fright. He knew that the human cultivator he had recognized as his master was finished. Sauron's attack was really too terrifying. Pucci! Sure enough, Sapu saw from afar that the human cultivator was slashed by the blood blade and was immediately torn into a cloud of blood mist. Not even a trace of him was left. As expected, he's finished. When Sapu saw the human cultivator's body turn into a cloud of blood mist, he fell to his knees with a thump. He could imagine how severe and terrifying Sauron's punishment for this traitor would be. Sauron laughed savagely, his eyes filled with satisfaction. This loathsome human cultivator had finally been killed by him, and the knot in his heart had finally been completely untied. Putting away the blood blade, Sauron's gaze landed on Sapu in the distant ruins, and a cruel smile tugged at his lips. Sensing Sauron's gaze, Sapu's legs went weak. He couldn't stand up, let alone get up and flee. Sapu, you really are a traitor. You actually betrayed me and recognized a human cultivator as your master. It seems that you don't care about this seat at all. Sauron slowly landed on the ruins, looked at the kneeling Sapu and grinned. Sapu's hands were on the ground, and his entire body was trembling. He began to speak incoherently, so anxious that he was about to cry. Sapu, don't worry, I won't kill you. After all, you gave me this person's position. Although this person was the one who ordered you to do this, you still did something. However, you can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. I will bring you back to the Merfolk clan and throw you into the shark extermination pond for 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, if you can survive, you'll be free, and I won't punish you for your crimes." Sauron grinned, but Sapu's face was deathly pale. The shark extermination pond was a place within the Merfolk clan specially used to punish traitors. Once thrown in, death was certain. No Merfolk had ever lasted more than 100 years in the shark extermination pond. Now, Sauron actually wanted to throw him into the shark extermination pond for 10,000 years. This was no different from killing him. "Spare me, Lord Sauron." Sapu hurriedly begged for mercy. "Oh, if you're not willing to exterminate the shark extermination pond, then I can only exterminate you now. This is your choice," Sauron said with killing intent. Sapu's face stiffened, and he hurriedly denied it, expressing his willingness to exterminate the shark extermination pond. Sauron nodded and picked up Sapu. Just as he was about to leave, a terrifying killing intent suddenly locked onto him. All the hair on Sauron's body stood on end as he felt a terrifying threat of death. He growled and lifted Sapu in his hand, placing him in front of him. Whoosh! A blood-red light quickly streaked across the sky, bringing with it soaring killing intent as it quickly arrived in front of Sauron. Uft! The blood-red light directly rushed into Sapu's back, then pierced through his chest. Sapu screamed as his entire body was turned into countless blood foams by the blood-red light. The blood-red light was unstoppable as it continued to rush toward Sauron. Sauron roared angrily as he pulled out the blood-red saber again and quickly slashed at the blood-red light. Ding, ding, ding. Every slash produced countless sparks, which looked extremely dazzling and resplendent. Sauron kept retreating, and in the process he saw the true appearance of the blood-red light. It was actually a blood-stained horn. Bang! After hundreds of slashes, Sauron's breathing became much more rapid, and the webbing between his thumb and forefinger was torn open, with extremely bright blood flowing out. What's going on? Sauron felt powerless, but that blood-stained horn was still unstoppable. It didn't seem to be declining at all. On the contrary, it was even more powerful and terrifying than before. At this moment, Sauron's real body, which was hiding in another ruin, slowly stood up and pulled out another arrow. This arrow was only an ordinary creation-level divine arrow, but it was enough. Under the power of Ho-Yi's divine arrow, Sauron was completely suppressed. Besides, with the power of Ho-Yi's divine arrow, Sauron would be completely injured or even killed within a few rounds. Zhuowen naturally didn't want to waste too much time. The right thing to do was to get rid of Sauron as soon as possible. Whoosh! Sauron's real body pulled the bowstring to 1/3 of an arc, then released it. Instantly, the divine arrow shot out with a sky-piercing, killing intent. After releasing the divine arrow, Sauron's real body let out a sigh as blood flowed out of his mouth. Chapter 2938. Ranking skyrocketed. My strength is still too weak. Zhuowen shook his head. Although his original body did not have a Taoist root, he had broken through the taboo of the heavenly Tao, and his combat strength was far superior to other cultivators of the same level. However, compared to the Pengu's sacred body of his doppelganger, it paled in comparison. If his original body used the Ho-Yi divine bow, he could draw the bowstring to 2/3 of its full length. Together with the Ho-Yi divine arrow, he could seriously injure or even kill Sauron. However, Zhuowen was not discouraged. The Ho-Yi divine arrow that he shot was enough to tire Sauron out. With this arrow, Sauron would definitely not be able to withstand it. Whoosh! The divine arrow was like a bolt of lightning. It turned into a bloody light and rushed toward Sauron with monstrous killing intent. The sharp tip of the arrow accurately pressed against the end of the blood-stained horn, emitting the sound of metal clashing. Boom! With the help of the divine arrow, the blood-stained horn exploded with a terrifying, explosive sound. On the body of the arrow, an even more shocking killing intent burst forth. Sauron held the huge bloody saber in front of him. He barely blocked the blood-stained horn and was panting, But soon his pupils shrank as he realized that the power of the blood-stained horn had changed qualitatively. The killing intent that burst out went straight to his bones and made him tremble. Crack! The blood-stained horn that was boosted by the arrow was too terrifying. The bloody saber could not even hold on for a second before it collapsed and shattered into countless bloody pieces. The blood-stained horn was like a hot knife through butter as it quickly drilled into Sauron's body. The scales that Sauron was so proud of could not withstand a single blow from the blood-stained horn. The violent killing intent turned into a physical destructive force that began to destroy the internal tissues of Sauron's body. Sauron screamed as his eyes widened in disbelief. He had a special bloodline and was known as a genius in the Merman clan. He was also one of the best among the younger generation of the 10 great clans. He had unlimited talent and a bright future. However, he never expected that this time he had come to the dark ancient city with great ambition. He wanted to achieve something, but he did not expect that he would be destroyed by an unknown human rogue cultivator. If it was a top genius of the human race like Zhongli Haoyan or Yi Qidong, he would not be so unwilling. However, he had never heard of this human cultivator before him. He was just a wandering cultivator who did not have a fixed residence. Human, who are you? What's your name? Sauron could feel that the tissues in his body under the killing intent of the blood-stained horn. Sauron's translation. He knew that he could not hold on for long. He wanted to know the name of the person who killed him before he died. The loser person. Zhuowen's with a calm as. Sauron translation. Sauron. Sauron roared at the sky. You are going too far. Don't think that no one will know just because you killed my merfolk clansmen. Today, I will use my lifeblood to set up a curse. After I die, you will be the enemy of my entire merfolk race. The entire merfolk race will not let you go. After Sauron finished speaking, his body could not withstand the violent power of the blood-stained horn. He spat out a mouthful of blood and exploded into a bloody mist. Zhuowen shot out another divine arrow, which landed in the bloody mist. There was a golden light in the bloody mist that was hit by the divine arrow. It let out a shrill cry before completely dispersing. Soul wants to escape? Wishful thinking. Zhuowen sneered. He knew that Sauron had a backup plan after his body was dispersing, so he was prepared. He discovered that Sauron's soul wanted to escape. However, after completely destroying Sauron's soul, Zhuowen frowned slightly. He discovered that in that instant, the traces of his fate seemed to have changed. It was as if a stain had been added to his fate. Although it wasn't obvious, Zhuowen was keenly aware of it. If it was in the past, Zhuowen naturally would not be able to detect his fate, let alone a stain in his fate. However, ever since he practiced the divine divination secret, he had grasped a trace of the art of fate and was sensitive to his own fate. Could it be because of Sauron? Zhuowen frowned. He could not help but think of Sauron's curse before he died. Could it be that the change in his fate was because of Sauron's curse? However, after using the divine divination technique, Zhuowen discovered that the additional stain on the traces of fate did not affect his physical condition or cultivation at all. It was like an inconspicuous stain on his clothes. It was not easy to detect and did not affect his clothes. Since it didn't have much effect on him, Zhuowen didn't care too much about it. After putting away Zorro's spirit ring, he released the Starry Sky token and was surprised to find that his Starry Sky token had suddenly increased by 10,000 points. He now had more than 20,000 points on his universal token. In other words, Sauron alone had contributed 10,000 points to him. It seemed like Sauron was indeed much stronger than Liang. Otherwise, his points would not be double of Liang's. On the other hand, Zhuowen's ranking had also increased by more than 30 places from 70. Now he was ranked 35th. Due to the incident in the dark ancient city, the number of cultivators in the space camp had decreased significantly. However, the Universal Tower was the core of the space camp. It was also the place where the universal tokens were distributed. Hence, there were still many cultivators here. As the cultivators entered and exited the Universal Tower, they would inevitably pass by the Universal Plaza. When they passed by the Universal Plaza, they would naturally take a few glances at the huge stone tablet in the middle of the plaza. This stone tablet was naturally the Universal Contribution Ranking. At this moment, there were many cultivators gathered in front of the Universal Contribution Ranking. They were all staring at the ranking in front of them in shock. On the ranking, the top 30 names did not change much. Everyone was already used to it. Their eyes were not on the top 30 names of the Universal Contribution Ranking. Instead, they were focused on the 35th name. This name was very unfamiliar to them. A few days ago, this name did not even appear on the Universal Contribution Ranking. However, today, this name had suddenly risen to 35th place. Where did this dragon text come from? Why did it suddenly jump to 35th place? Which sex disciple is he from? In front of the ranking, many cultivators who had doubts in their hearts asked the question in their hearts. I have seen this dragon text before. I remember that a few hours ago, this dragon text was only in the 70s. Why did it suddenly double and enter 35th place? An old man spoke. His voice was filled with vicissitudes and shock. Chapter 2939. Zhong Li Haoyan, are you making this up? A few hours ago, he was only in the 70s. In just a few hours, you mean that this kid has accumulated 10,000 points? Accumulating 10,000 points in a few hours, this is not possible, right? Normally, when a cultivator kills a foreign race of the same level, they can only accumulate 20 points. According to this calculation, this kid killed 500 foreign race of the same level in a few hours? Not possible. Not to mention that foreign race of the same level are stronger than us human cultivators. It is very difficult for human cultivators to kill foreign race of the same level, unless it is a prodigy like Zhong Li Haoyan or Yi Qidong. Now that the human race and the foreign race are not in a war, it is very difficult to find 500 foreign race of the same level in a few hours. Everyone discussed animatedly, feeling that they could not figure out how this long one was able to obtain 10,000 points in such a short period of time. This kid should have killed a foreign race expert of a much higher level than him. Otherwise, he would not be able to obtain 10,000 points in such a short period of time. Suddenly, a slightly cold voice came from behind the ranking board. Everyone followed the voice and saw a slender and elegant young woman slowly walking over. This woman looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. Her figure was well proportioned, especially her pair of slender jade legs, which were very eye-catching. However, this tall beauty had a very cold temperament. Even the tone of her voice was cold, without the slightest bit of emotion. In front of the ranking board, when everyone saw this tall beauty, their eyes were filled with reverence, and they all automatically opened a path for this beauty. Behind the tall beauty followed an old man. This old man's face was full of age spots, and a very serious aura of death lingered around him. However, the old man's eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, emitting a bright light that could not be looked at directly, especially the aura that was faintly revealed from the old man's body. It was more vast than the sea, more majestic than the mountains, giving people an unapproachable feeling. This old man was definitely a very terrifying expert. I didn't expect it to be Zhong Li Haoyan. Didn't they say that she entered the dark ancient city to look for ancestral shaman Gonggong? Why did she turn back to the space camp? Many people were discussing in low voices when they saw the cold woman walking over. It was obvious that they were puzzled by Haoyan's appearance here. Zhong Li Haoyan paid no attention to the astonishment of everyone and directly arrived before the rankings, and her beautiful eyes stared at the name, Long Wen at the 35th position as her eyes narrowed. To be honest, a mere rank 35 on the Universal Contribution Board was nothing in her eyes. What she was surprised about was that this Long Wen was able to instantly obtain 10,000 points. She knew very well that, if she wanted to obtain so many points in an instant, she would have to cross at least 2 major realms and destroy a foreign race that was much stronger than her. Back then, she had once crossed 2 major realms and killed a foreign race expert with great difficulty. However, she had only obtained 10,000 points, and this was her most glorious achievement in history. But that was when her cultivation was only at the first step of Tao validation. Originally, she thought that it was unlikely that there would be a prodigy who could kill a foreign race that was 2 realms higher than him. She didn't expect that she would be lucky enough to see it today. Young miss, this old man doesn't believe that there would be a human cultivator who could cross 2 realms and kill a foreign race cultivator just by relying on his own strength. The old man behind Zhongli Haoyan narrowed his eyes and glanced at the Longwen name indifferently as he spoke in a neither fast nor slow manner. Even if this person relied on a powerful external object, it's still extraordinary. After all, a powerful external object requires sufficient strength to control it. Zhongli Haoyan narrowed her beautiful eyes and said indifferently. The old man nodded and didn't refute. Zhongli Haoyan's point of view wasn't wrong. All right, let's go to the Universal Tower to exchange for things first. It's very dangerous to enter the dark, ancient city this time. Now that the Alliance is trapped in front of the Door of Darkness, it will take a lot of time to break through the Door of Darkness. I need to use this time to exchange for powerful artifacts in the Universal Tower to deal with the huge dangers that may appear in the dark, ancient city this time. Zhongli Haoyan was very decisive and didn't hesitate at all. After she finished speaking, she left the Universal Contribution Board with the old man and entered the Universal Tower. Although she was curious about Long Wen's sudden increase of 10,000 points, she didn't care too much about it. Zhongli Haoyan was very confident in her own strength. She was now standing at the peak of the younger generation in the entire Xianmi heavenly domain and was fully deserving of the title of number 1. In her opinion, Long Wen's cultivation should only be in the first step of the Tao confirming realm. Perhaps he was only the heavenly Tao master. Perhaps he was lucky enough to kill an expert at the level of Lord Hanyuan, which was why he obtained such high points. Although she was somewhat interested in such a talent, she didn't particularly care. After all, her cultivation had already entered the 3rd step of the Tao confirming realm, and her battle strength was far higher than her cultivation. A mere heavenly Tao master, no matter how much of a genius he was just a small figure not worth mentioning to her. Unless Longwen was also in the 3rd step of the Tao confirming realm and obtained 10,000 points, Zhongli Haoyan was afraid that she would really pay attention to him and even view him as a great enemy. However, Zhongli Haoyan knew that this was basically impossible. When one was in the 1st step of the Tao confirming realm, it was still possible to kill a foreign race 2 realms higher. However, when one's cultivation reached the 3rd step, wanting to kill a foreign race 2 realms higher was simply wishful thinking. Take Zhongli Haoyan, for example. She could already be considered the most monstrous junior in the Xianmi heavenly domain. Her cultivation was now at the mid-stage of the Lord of Creation realm, and her battle strength was comparable to that of the Lord of Creation. But if he wanted to kill an alien of the Lord of Creation's level, then he was dreaming. However, when Zhongli Haoyan was in the 1st step of the Tao confirming realm, she frequently killed foreign races. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to accumulate so many points and become the fully deserving number 1 on the Universal Contribution ranking. If Zhongli Haoyan knew that Zhuowen had used the Lord of Mystery to kill the peak Lord of Creation of the Merfolk race, Sauron, she probably wouldn't be so calm. Sauron had a special bloodline and had a very high status in the Merfolk race. He was also a well-known prodigy of the primitive heavenly domain. Although Zhongli Haoyan was conceited, she was still lacking in strength to kill Sauron even though she could defeat him. As the main character of this small incident, Zhuowen didn't know that his specific ranking would attract the attention of many people. After his clone gradually formed a complete physical body, his gaze suddenly turned cold as he looked at a pile of rubble in the southeast corner. "You've been there for quite a while. Why haven't you come out yet?" Jouwen's voice was very cold and emotionless. In fact, during his battle with Sauron, his divine sense had inadvertently scanned this pile of rubble and discovered that there were still cultivators' auras hidden in this pile of rubble. Although the aura was very weak, Jouwen's divine sense was extraordinary. Even if it was just a trace of aura, he could acutely sense it. Indeed, not long after Jouwen's reprimand, 3 people slowly walked out of the rubble. They were 2 women and a man. After the 3 of them walked out, Jouwen's gaze instantly landed on the woman standing at the back. This woman was very beautiful and was very rare. She was simply a femme fatale,